Hey everybody, welcome back to The Beard and the Bald. I am Paul Shirey, the Beard, joined by my compatriot, the Bald, Christopher Bumbray.
Well, hello.
We also have a special guest with us this week who's been on the show before, Mr. Alex Mady. I think we had a name for you last time, didn't we? But I can't remember what it was.
I think I was either the bitch or the bastard.
You could be the bastard bitch.
There you go.
The bitch
I have no beard and I am not bald.
The bitch. Well, look at you. Aren't you fancy?
I am.
I mean, I guess we call you like the Bear Jew as well?
You could. I will allow it.
That's so inappropriate. Or is it not?
It's only inappropriate if it's not accurate.
So there you go. So we've got quite a few things to discuss. One of the reasons I wanted to have Alex on this week is because Alex was at Comic-Con with me last week, and Alex covered a lot of stuff that I wasn't able to cover. So again, why he was there, so we could split the work. But Alex has a take on some stuff that was premiered or whatever. He saw a few panels that I didn't see, so Alex can offer his perspective on some of those things. And I thought it would be good to bounce some of those things off of him. And then Chris was not there.
No.
But you can ask any questions that you may have, or anything that you think listeners would want to hear that we may miss.
I feel like you and I have been through this before.
It's almost like we recorded this podcast before
And shelved it.
So it was, it was kind of a rushed episode. We did our best, but I was listening to it while I was editing, and I was like, man, it felt like something was missing. And that's why I was like, it didn't feel like a complete episode. And honestly, I want our listeners to have the best experience. You guys are giving us your time to listen to the show.
The full beard and full bald.
The full beard, full bald. So wanted to get a more complete version. So this is the reshoot episode of Beard and the Bald. So if you're wondering with extra Jew, extra Bear Jew. So if you're wondering why we didn't have an episode last week, that's why. It was not for lack of trying on both of mine and Chris's part, but I just made the call to try again, make it a little better for you guys. Plus, like, there was a couple things that happened, like Rutger Hauer died. Mm-hmm. I think that day.
You right after the podcast, and then you saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as well.
Yeah, so I think it'll make for a more lively discussion on that as well. So we're going to talk about that.
Before we get into anything with Comic-Con, though, I have some questions. Okay. So when you guys were at Comic-Con, were you staying in one room or two rooms?
We had two rooms. So I had.
We stayed in one.
Because my follow-up was going to be two beds or one bed.
One bed, and we all slept on it.
Oh, nice.
And you slept head towards the headboard, and the next person would be the head towards.
My next question is, Paul, big spoon or little spoon?
It was more Requiem for a Dream. It was ass to ass.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I do have a Comic-Con question. So this was left off the agenda originally, but I want to ask. So Alex, you met a friend of mine, or you didn't meet a friend of mine, but you were in the same room as a really good friend of mine earlier this week.
Are you talking about Tom Cruise?
Yes, my best friend, Tom Cruise.
I was 100 feet away from him, and I think he got me pregnant.
Oh man, he's the greatest. Oh man,
you made eye contact, didn't you?
We did. It was intense, and it was just I was in the danger zone in my pants.
Dude, he like shook my hand and like posed to the photo with me. It was insane. It was magic. I felt like a full Scientologist now.
Are you a level 3 Zedon?
He transferred Scientology into Chris with one handshake.
Yeah, it's like an STD.
That's how it happens.
Yeah, and I was doing like magic and stuff like that, like bending spoons with my mind.
Chris can actually walk on ceilings now, like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So it was a gift.
But I do want to ask though. So you were at the Top Gun Maverick panel.
Well, it was the Terminator Dark Fate panel, right, Alex?
Oh, so it was Paramount, and then they just brought it, and they were like, "Oh, we've got some more stuff."
Right.
Not even. They did Terminator, and at the end they rolled the footage again, and then everybody was cheering. And at the last minute, Conan O'Brien comes out. Everybody cheers for him, and he goes, "I'm here to introduce a sequel everybody's been waiting for." And then he introduced Tom Cruise. He came out and talked for a few minutes about how all the stunts were actually filmed in planes and it's not CGI. And then they just rolled the trailer, and that was it. But it was a great trailer.
Amazing.
Yeah, the trailer's really good. Better than I anticipated it would be.
Well, it kicks in with that Harold Faltermeyer music, you know.
Yeah, but it's like a redone version of it. It's like a composed, like a more like string version.
Well, contemporary version, I think. I'm looking at the credits now, and apparently, according to Wikipedia, so Harold Faltermeyer is actually back for the score, but he's with Hans Zimmer, which is a pretty awesome pairing.
Holy
That's a combo,
shit!
yeah.
That's a badass score right there.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that sounds pretty amazing. I mean, I'm wondering.
Hans was doing it. That's pretty great.
I'm half wondering if that's actually gonna be like the thing, but that's pretty cool if that's what it is, though. If it's Hans Zimmer and Harold Faltermeyer, because Harold Faltermeyer and Hans Zimmer used to work together. They were like Hans Zimmer, I think, emerged from like Harold Faltermeyer might have been like one of his mentors or something like that, because they all kind of have that same sound, right? In the 80s, like they all worked for Simpson, Bruckheimer, and now Zimmer's got his whole media ventures thing. But I think
he's like Zimmer like churns these guys out, like Steve Jablonsky, fucking oh my god, Harry Gregson Williams, all these guys. He's like,
and John Powell,
the Hans Zimmer factory. Yeah, Powell. Like,
but I think he cut his teeth though on doing like Don Simpson, Jerry Bruckheimer movies. Like one of his first big
Days
scores,
of Thunder.
Yeah, which is an amazing score, by the way. Hit the pace car.
Hit the pace car. Hit the pace car.
But so I mean, it's cool if that's. I really hope that Faltermeyer is coming back, because that is like still a really cool score too.
It's on IMDb too. I just checked. Not that I didn't believe you, but just wanted to source it a second time, and they have the same thing listed. So
Kaczynski always has really good scores for his movies, though. Like that's something he seems to really get that. Like Tron had that awesome Daft Punk score, Oblivion,
M83 for fucking Oblivion. Yeah, that was
Only the Brave. I think it was Joseph Trapanese or something like that. Like it was.
Joseph Trapanese also did work on the Tron. The movie. I don't know if it was the movie, but he worked on the animated series as well.
That was a movie. That was the best movie you never saw. Only the Brave. I mean, that was a movie nobody went to see.
I still haven't seen it. I need to.
Super solid movie.
Yeah, I've been curious to watch it myself.
Oh, I think you'd probably really like it. It's too bad you didn't see it in the big screen though, because it was shot like an IMAX, and I didn't even see it. I don't even think it came out in IMAX, but it was shot with IMAX cameras apparently. But it ended up getting like a pretty like a low-key release, but I saw it theatrically in its run, and I went to the press screening, and I really liked it.
I'll get to it someday.
But Top Gun Maverick anyway looks amazing.
Yeah, it looks. I mean, I'll be there. It looks, for a movie that's like, a sequel that's that late in the game, it looks better than it should.
And he's only gone up one rank.
Ed Harris was
awesome. Which is definitely surprising in a military career to still be a captain at that point. Like, he should be retired.
Well, would he still be flying jets in his 50s?
Well, it looks like it's turning into drones now, so
I think there's more to it than the flying jet stuff. But yeah, there's still 50-year-old pilots out there.
And then there's John Hamm, who looks like he's an instructor at Top Gun from the brief clip that you got of him in the trailer, which is also amazing. Then Miles Teller. The only thing I don't like is, I feel like that's a little too on the nose that he's Goose's son.
He's like exactly like he's like playing the piano and
I do hope
wearing the same Hawaiian shirt.
And they're doing like volleyball as well. But I feel like that was always
football.
Gonna happen,
it's football.
I do hope though
they
that
changed the sport.
It would be really cool. Like, I like that Jennifer Connelly is the love interest, but it would be neat if Meg Ryan came back in like a cameo as his mom, as his Miles Teller's mom.
Wait, you don't want Kelly McGillis back as the love interest?
I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. Apparently, her and Cruise never really got along anyway. I don't think it's going to happen at this point.
Have you seen Kelly McGillis today?
I mean, whatever. I mean, it would be kind of cool if she was acknowledged, though, a little at least. I mean, it's. But I don't think they ever got along, though. I think there was always kind of a thing. The thing about Top Gun, I know that a lot of people probably actually have a problem with that, but the thing about it is that, so in Top Gun, he's a young guy, and she's kind of like his older flight instructor. Like, I never really got watching that movie that they were in love. Like, it was always kind of just a fling, and I don't think it was ever
like they just wanted to fuck. They were just like,
It wasn't ever supposed to be that they were gonna like get married and have kids and stuff like that and live happily ever after. Like it was a total fling. The movie wasn't really a romance. It was a romance, but it was a romance between two dudes.
It's true. I mean, it's true, and that's without
it's a
going into
romance
the
between
whole.
him
That's
and
without
Goose.
going into the gay aspect. I think
Well,
it's
yeah,
it was just it's
him and Goose, and then Iceman.
yeah,
He's loved again with Iceman at the end.
bros before hoes. Huh? That's the way.
You can ride my tail anytime. I mean, we know what that means.
Ass fucking.
I mean, yeah, it's great. I love it.
Well, the only time he liked Kelly McGillis is when she dressed up like a dude in the elevator. And
Yes,
that's when things got
true.
hot.
And he gets really into it. Yeah. Oh, I love that. And then he shows up at her house and he's like, "You mind if I take a shower?" That's great.
Can you put on this Val Kilmer mask?
What's funny is that she had a problem with him wanting to take a shower. Like if they were gonna bone, which they did not bone in that one. But I mean, like if someone comes over and they're like, "Hey, I was just playing volleyball for like 7 hours and I'm really sweaty, and we might fuck later," and he's like, "Can I take a shower?" She's like, "No."
Well, he didn't say that. If he had been direct.
I think my first love scene that I ever saw in a movie though was Top Gun. Probably I'm thinking back because
and you know what? Fucking Tony Scott fucked it up for everybody because now at that age everybody thinks, oh shit, like if fucking Berlin doesn't start playing, if there's not
the blue light,
slow
and
wind
the
blowing,
wind.
blowing through the room, then it's not gonna be real. It's the same thing. You know what? Tom Cruise kind of fucked everybody up for their sex lives in the future because it's the same thing with Risky Business, which I love.
Yes,
but like Rebecca De Mornay comes in and like
stairs, the
wind blows and like she's like, "You ready for me?" And she's like looking all hot and like the fucking doors blow open and they're like making out.
Score going nuts.
Yeah, just fucks everybody up. Then they're like getting ready to have sex for the first time and it's awkward and you're fumbling around and figuring everything out and you're like, why is this not like Tom Cruise movie?
So I actually watched. So I bought Risky Business on iTunes about a year ago, and I hadn't watched it in a while. It had been a little while, and it's what's amazing when you watch that movie though is how Tom Cruise kind of emerged fully formed, right?
Yeah.
Even just as a young man, like he was always.
And that was just before Top Gun was Risky Business.
A couple of years, yeah, but it's just he really emerged fully formed though. Like he was Tom Cruise, movie star, like right away. Even in Taps, kind of, I mean, I love Risky Business and I love Top Gun and I cannot wait for the sequel. I've wanted a Top Gun 2 for so long. My only problem is that I wish it was Tony Scott, obviously. Unfortunately, he passed away, which is still a horrible tragedy as far as I'm concerned because he was one of my favorite directors.
Yeah, it was like, I'll never forget. I wrote that story up too. I remember reading it. I was like, it was almost like
so depressed when that happened. Yeah, that he killed himself. I was so depressed, and you never know what's going on in somebody's head. I mean, because you wouldn't think that he would be the kind, but you look at his filmography too, though, and it's like the guy had very few duds, very few, and even
the
his
movies
not
that weren't
good
huge hits are still very watchable.
Yeah, I don't think he ever made a movie that was totally unwatchable.
Yeah, I think his worst is The Fan with Wesley Snipes.
I actually like The Fan. I watched The Fan not long ago, and The Fan actually I think is held up really well, especially considering how insane some super fans are online. It's almost ahead of its time in a weird way.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was because it was just kind of like, eh.
And I mean, it has some really good scenes. The Fan. I think probably for me, like my least favorite Tony Scott's, if I'm thinking, is some of his Denzel ones, not Crimson Tide or Man on Fire, because those are stone cold masterpieces. But like, I feel like Unstoppable was fine, but it was just kind of that and taking
Deja Vu.
1, 2, 3.
I just watched Deja Vu recently, and actually I enjoyed it.
Deja Vu, I remember not really liking that much when I saw it originally, although I thought that the car chase was amazing, and had some really good action. But I remember though taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3 was the one that I really didn't like because I left the original.
That was pretty. Meh.
But even that had some good stuff. Like at the beginning, it has like the Jay-Z song as they're showing like the hijacking and they're playing 99 Problems. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, Alex, we were on the we kind of took a detour there, but we were on the topic of Maverick. But before that was Terminator: Dark Fate, and you saw some new footage that I had not seen at CinemaCon, and you said that they had showed the fight between what's her name? My brain's not working. The lead chick. Say again.
Or Mackenzie Davis.
Mackenzie Davis. There we go. I needed a line. Mackenzie Davis we saw the fight. You saw the fight, or some bits of the fight between her and the lead Terminator,
Oh, Gabriel Luna, is it?
Gabriel
Yeah.
Luna. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, the bridge fight that you see in the trailer, they showed an extended version of that where you see a lot more of their showdown, and then Linda Hamilton obviously shows up, and she is a total badass in the footage.
Yeah. I saw.
Uh,
I think they showed that at CinemaCon, where she steps out and like is firing all the different weapons.
yeah, and I mean, they've got when I don't know if you saw the part where she goes to the bridge after she knocks the Terminator off, and she takes a grenade and she just
Yeah, says
drops
I'll be
it.
back.
Yeah, so I mean, all that was cool, and we saw some behind the scenes stuff. It is definitely a hard R. It's got a lot of violence in there. They don't really explain how Arnold is back as the T-800 and why he knows who Sarah Connor
I
is.
must admit, I read all the spoilers from the test screening on Reddit.
Yeah, I saw some of that too, and
I
it's
shouldn't have
definitely
done it.
not.
I shouldn't have done it, but I was very I was just very curious as to how the movie was going to turn out, and so I know how he's back, and it's actually really cool. It's actually if the spoilers are legit from the test screening, I think they're reshooting some of it, but it's actually really cool how he's brought back in. I like it a lot,
Yeah,
Mm.
and
and
the
I think he's
actual
a lot
action
more
looks good.
prominent. Yeah, and I think he's a lot more prominent than you'd think by the trailers. And there's like a cool dynamic there between him and Sarah Connor.
Right. Well, Alex, you saw some of that, right? With between him, some scenes with him and Linda Hamilton.
Yeah, when they find Mackenzie Davis takes them to meet, and when Sarah Connor sees him, she says, "You know, when this is all done, I'm gonna kill you." And he goes, "I understand." And when they show some of the fight scenes that they've got, there's kind of they have each other's back, but when he turns to protect her, she says, "Don't touch me," and pushes him off. And so there's a love-hate thing going on, but it's definitely very similar to the dynamic they had in Terminator 2, where she begrudgingly accepted his assistance even though she knew what he really was. So
Yeah.
I mean, it looks similar to that, but the difference in the footage, aside from the big airplane sequence that they show in the trailer at the end, a lot of it is in bright sunlight in desert areas, and
I like
so
that.
it
I
looks
like
nice because you can
that they're
see
doing
everything.
shooting stuff outside, and that was one of the things I
Yeah.
liked about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as well. It's like finally a movie where you can actually see what's going on. Hey, I hope you guys don't mind. I had to put the fan on in the background because it's a really humid day here in Montreal. I hope it's not interfering too much with the sound.
It just makes us feel like we're in your neighborhood.
Nice, because it is friggin' humid here today.
Um, so also at Comic-Con this year, we saw quite a few other things. I also have to say, like the floor. I don't know if you felt this way as well, Alex, but it was more packed. It felt more packed than ever.
Oh yeah, it was awful.
It was really there was a point where I did an interview with the Hasbro folks for Transformers, and I was also I had my son with me, and he was in line for the Lego exclusives. Now, the Lego and the Hasbro booths are literally kitty corner from each other. And if there was nobody there, it would take you all of 30 seconds or less to walk from Lego to Hasbro. Maybe less, maybe 20 seconds. They're right there. So I left the line from Lego to get over to Hasbro after I got my son situated there. And it took me about 7, 8 minutes just to get in that 20-second spot from there to the fucking Hasbro booth. And it was obnoxious. It was just herding cattle. And I feel like they need to figure something out to like expand. I don't know what the answer is to that, but fuck. It was so packed. It just felt way more packed than it ever has before.
And even
And
on
that
preview
sucked.
night, where it's usually lighter and easier to get around, that felt like a full
Oh
day.
yeah.
It was
Yeah.
brutal.
It really was.
That stresses me out. You know, the only thing I can kind of relate that to is, you know, I've never done San Diego Comic-Con or anything, but the other thing that I go to that's huge is, well, TIFF, right? And TIFF, if you go to the premieres, it gets insane like that too, because everybody's outside because there's the paparazzi and stuff like that, and all the star fuckers and stuff like that. So it gets a little bit insane. And I'm always like with crowds, man. I always want to avoid crowds.
Oh, see,
I
and
don't
with
like being
Comic-Con,
around
there's
crowds.
no avoiding crowds. Like
Sure.
you can't. Like if you're somebody that, and I guess this goes to anybody that's thinking about going to Comic-Con and has
Mhm.
never been, like if you have severe anxiety, and I have
Oh, yeah.
severe PTSD, so
Sure.
trust me, like that shit fucks with me. I just handle it.
Oh, of course. But I
But
mean, you could contextualize economy. I mean, you know, I'm the same way. I can kind of, if I'm working or whatever, I mean, it's
yeah,
fine.
yeah, but just for anybody that has that, like
Mhm.
fucking, I'm just telling you right now, like be prepared
Oh, sure. I
because
mean,
you're gonna get
it's big, man.
stuffed.
I
Yeah,
mean, it's a big deal. It really
it is.
is.
It
Yeah.
is.
Well, there was one where we didn't have a pass, and Paul's like, "Oh yeah, it shouldn't be busy. Get there early and go get in line for Hall H, and you should be able to get in no problem." I was there 3.5, 4 hours before the panel, and the line, I measured it on my phone. It was 1.4 miles long just to get into Hall H.
That was for the Russo brothers.
That was for the
Or
writers.
not,
That
or
was for
for
Marcus and
Marcus and
McFeely.
McFeely. Yeah, yeah. We had a pass for the Russos. So I don't have no idea. I don't think anything came out of that panel though. So
No, I don't think
not
so.
wouldn't have been worth the time to wait anyways. Um, one other, I didn't talk about this on our first shoot, but I did Scare Diego on preview night, and it was basically all It Chapter 2 stuff, and we saw a bunch of extended scenes from the film. And I gotta say, I am just so fucking excited for this movie. It's definitely one of my most anticipated of the fall season, and everything that they showed us just feels really in line. They showed an extended scene when they're at the Chinese restaurant, and it feels like they never missed a beat, and that the new actors, the older actors, they've really just taken on these roles perfectly. And one thing that I thought was interesting was that each one of the kids that played in the first film wrote a letter to their future character self and gave it to each one of the actors. So it was almost like a preparation thing. And I think that just goes, it's one of the many small things that shows that Andy Muschietti is like really, taken to heart crafting this story for the next film, which apparently is 2 hours and 45 minutes.
I mean, that's fine. The first one was too, and it was very good. I mean, that's the thing. People kind of get hung up on running times, but if it's a good movie, it doesn't really matter. It's only when the movie's really shitty. I mean, Avengers Endgame was 3 hours, and that was perfectly watchable. I mean, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was 2 hours and 40 minutes, and it didn't feel like 2 hours and 40 minutes to me. And the last It was the same length, and didn't feel like it was too long at all. I mean, this is a kind of a big novel too. You need to kind of do it justice.
Oh God, it's like 1,000 pages or 800 pages something. So, but yeah, it feels like they really they took their time and crafted something great. So
yeah,
I'm super pumped for that. The other thing that I got to do, this was my highlight of the trip, honestly, was doing the Cobra Kai interviews. I fucking love that show. I
still
grew up
haven't
on
watched Still haven't watched season 2 yet. I gotta watch it.
It's so
It's really good. I think it's better than the first
good.
season.
It just pisses me off the way they're doing it, where you can't buy the individual episodes like you could last year. But whatever, I'll just have to sign up for a month.
And you can't subscribe to YouTube, is that right?
No,
Or
we
you
can.
do,
No, we can.
do
but
the
it doesn't-
temporary. See, all
Yeah.
I did was the trial, and I
Yeah.
just binged it as fast as I could, and then I canceled.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna do that, but then season 3 comes out, and it's
Not until next year.
it's annoying.
That's just what I'll do each time. As long as they offer it, I'll just do the trial, binge it,
Yeah.
and cancel. That's what I
Mm.
did. So if anybody's looking for an option for that, that's what I did, and it was fine. I'm not being billed anymore because there's literally nothing else on YouTube Red that I care to watch. But meeting those guys, meeting Ralph Macchio, William Zabka, and Martin Kove, and then the kids, like, this is crazy to me as a kid. In 1984 and 1985 and beyond, I had my VHS copy of fucking The Karate Kid and I'd watch that shit, over and over again. It's like part of the cultural zeitgeist. And then getting to meet those guys.
Speaking of Martin Kove, did you spot
amazing.
him in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yep.
I did.
I saw him.
He was in one of the episodes of
Bounty Law. It's kind of cool though. I used to watch him when I was a kid too, but you know what I remember him from? Not only Karate Kid, but I used to love this show that he was in called Hard Time on Planet Earth.
Never even heard of that.
I've never heard of that
Hard
either.
Time on Planet Earth. Yeah, so he's like a prisoner from he's like an alien criminal, and then he's sentenced to live on Earth and do good deeds in order to get back to be able to go back home.
So like Highway to Heaven.
Yeah, that was more like an action show.
Highway to
and
Mars.
He had this little probe eye thing that used to follow him around, and was like would it was like kind of like the ethnic voice, like damn, like that kind of like it was silly, but it was
What the fuck? I've never even heard
Hard
of
It
this.
lasted 13 episodes and was a mid-season replacement on CBS, so that's why.
Yeah,
we
but
got
I remember really liking
Chris
it
reaching
as a
into the
kid.
random bag. Jesus
I
Christ.
remember I really liked it as a kid. I don't know, it was weird. It was on, I think it was CTV had it, like the Canadian channel. channel, and they played it like at a weird time, so that I'm probably like in the afternoon on the weekends or something like that, and I was able to see it, and it was just because we get them at different schedules than you guys too, and there must have been something about it that I liked.
Yeah,
it was the same way I watched Sledgehammer too when I was a kid. I thought that was the best.
Well, Paul, the reason it got canceled is when it aired in the U.S., it aired opposite Unsolved Mysteries and Growing Pains, so nobody in America was watching it.
I watched both of those shows religiously when I was growing up. So I must have aired at a different time in the U.S. or something.
Yeah, funny. Another cool fact about Martin Cove: we both share same birthday, March 6th, although not the same year. So yeah, anyways, meeting those guys was cool. So I had a kid with me this year, which was because we were at VidCon and then had vacation, and there was no way out of it. So he had to come. It wasn't ideal. It wasn't what I wanted to do, but it ended up working out just fine. But my kid was sitting with me at the round tables. So I was like, well, because he loves Cobra Kai. Like, he loves the show as much as I do. And I was like, dude, and he was nervous. He was like, I'm just going to go sit over there. I was like, no, come just sit down. You don't have to ask anything. Just sit, just enjoy it. And every time, like, this is a little note for anybody, bring your kid with you to some of these, because like as soon as they come up, like Ralph Macchio, fucking William Zabka, they're like, as soon as they see Dash, they're like, oh hey man, they're giving him high fives and shaking his hand and talking to him, and the rest of us they're just like, whatever, a bunch of old fucks.
Yeah, fuck off.
But like fucking the kids get all the fucking attention, which I thought was cool. It was cool for him, for my kid, but
somebody said it's a little bit jealous, Alex?
Oh well, yeah.
Well, how did Dash deal when Kevin Feige was around?
So I have video. I had to take video because we go to the press room after Hall H. I literally ran there with my kid to get up to there, and Taylor, our camera guy, Taylor Johnson, he was already set up, and I'm standing in the press line, and Kevin Feige. This is a testament to what a mensch he is, right? So they started. They didn't have people coming in on both sides of the line. They had them all coming from one side, and we were towards the other end. So it was kind of like I knew we were going to get fucked, which we kind of did. But Kevin Feige knows this, and he knows. I think this is kind of a testament to his, how smart he is. He's like, what's talking to Entertainment Tonight going to do for me? What's it going to do for my for the people that pay to see my movies? He's like, I'm going to go talk to the nerd sites because that's where whatever I say is going to get out there and really mean something. So he walked to the very end of the line and started from the opposite end, which was just great because then I was able to interview him and not be like, oh, you have to group it or whatever. It was like I got him one-on-one, which was awesome. It was great to talk to him, and he had like perfect answers to every question. But I look over, my kid is sitting in the corner of the room. It's a big room, and he's just put baby in the corner, and he's just sitting in the back. And I see him over there just like completely oblivious to what's going on.
Oh, yeah. But I mean,
So you have Kevin Feige's in the room, and then the Black Widow cast, like Scarlett Johansson, fucking David Harbour, everybody's starting to filter in. And I look over, and there's my kid just flipping his fucking AirPods. His little AirPod box, just flipping it up and down like a little goofball, sitting on his knees and just like do 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 do. And then I had to video it because it was just too hilarious. So I video him just like flipping that shit, and I just pan my phone over to reveal there's Kevin Feige just standing right there doing interviews. And it's just so hilarious to me that like my kid just like could not give a fuck. Like he's just more focused in like flipping his AirPods and just goofing off, not even paying attention to like what's going on in the room. I thought that was hilarious. And when you watch the video, you'll see. And I remember I played it for him, and he was like, he's like, I don't even know who that is. I'm like, it's Kevin Feige. He's like, who's
if a skateboard hit him in the nuts or something, he would have laughed.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh, fuck. Anyways, that was funny. I thought it was hilarious. And it was, it was cool to get to talk to Feige, and I talked to everybody else you can watch on YouTube, but we had to group some of them, which really pissed me off. But that just happens sometimes, and
I guess we should talk then about the Marvel lineup, right?
Yeah, let's hit the Marvel panel. So I was sitting next to Alex. Alex was a very nice boy, and he saved spots for me and Dash. So we all enjoyed the Marvel panel together, and they had lots and lots of reveals, which I'm sure everybody has devoured at this point.
Mm-hmm. I guess you don't really have to reveal them, but we should.
Yeah, there's nothing to reveal, but Alex, what was your big takeaway from that? Like, what stood out to you as like the coolest thing?
Well, there's no Avengers type movie in Phase 4. It doesn't really bring anything together, but there's a huge emphasis on the Disney Plus series,
Yeah.
which when I just did a top 10 list on the site and thinking back on it, they really seem to be using these TV shows like the Falcon and Winter Soldier show. I
As
definitely got
bookends.
the yeah, and they're going to use it to kind of explore these long form stories a little bit, but like WandaVision, they said is going to lead directly into Doctor Strange. Her
Yeah. Yeah.
development in that show is going to delve into the movie. So you can watch the movies independently, but these shows are really for the first time not like the Netflix stuff or even Agents of Shield. These are going to have repercussions on
Yeah.
the MCU, which is very cool.
Yeah.
It's
I
pretty
thought that was a
ingenious
big.
though, because that now like the way that they're driving subscriptions to Disney Plus, and like I feel like when that comes out, it's gonna be a monster. Like it's just
Oh yeah.
everybody. It's
Yeah.
gonna be one of those things everybody's gonna subscribe to. I'm almost stressed out in a way because I'm wondering if we're gonna get it in Canada when it launches in the US. I think we probably will, or very shortly afterwards. I know that the Winter Soldier stuff probably isn't going to hit until next fall, so by then we'll have it for sure, or like fall of 2020. But I mean, the thing about Disney Plus was when they read the price point, the fact that it was so low is a
Well,
killer.
they'll
Is
start
a
low, but I
killer.
guarantee you it'll
Oh yeah, it'll
rise
go up, of course.
fast.
Well, it's like it's like drugs. You get the first one free, right? They're
Yeah.
hooking you up.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they're not
Yeah.
telling us is that it's probably going to be that price point, but an additional $4 right out the bat if you want 4K.
I would bet.
Yeah, that's true. They could do something like that.
I would bet.
I
I
could
mean,
see it.
that's yeah. But
But yeah, I think that was a big takeaway was that these shows aren't really like they're you can I'm sure you can enjoy them on their own just like you can enjoy a movie on its own, but it ultimately all of these shows will absolutely feed into the movies and probably and sounds like to the point that you may even have to go watch the shows for everything to kind of make sense.
that's going
Right.
to be the
So,
big test for me, though, whether or not these shows are going to work. Because I have to admit, like, I never watched the Netflix shows, right? I watched some of Daredevil. It's not that I didn't like it, but it was just that there's so much to watch out there. And, I love superhero movies. I love going to see them. But I get enough of that kind of theatrically, though, right? You see these movies every week and they're great and you have a really good time with them. But then when I come home kind of and I'm watching TV, if I'm going to invest 8 hours or something like that, often, I like to watch something that's a little bit different just because I like a good variety. So they're going to really have to be good in order to hook an audience and to hook somebody like me into watching them. I think they probably will be, though, because the casting is great and it's movie stars. And
yeah.
and
Well, and
these stars
it's
directing,
familiar
it's
faces.
and it's a full, like, it feels like it's not really, Netflix, as much as I like Netflix, as much as I like those shows, they were always kind of TV shows and they were too long. They were 13 episodes long, and it was, if this is more like a 6 hour or an 8 hour movie, I think that's an easier sell to me.
And I really don't think these are intended to be recurring series. I think these are
No,
going to be one-off event
I think
series.
so
So,
too.
Yeah,
because the
I think
Hawkeye
so
one,
too.
they're gonna. I
Yeah.
think this is it for Jeremy Renner. This show is really to give him a focus and transition it off to the Kate Bishop character, so that he
That's
can be done with the MCU.
that's gonna be. I mean, that's gonna be the test, though, whether or not people are gonna watch a Hawkeye show.
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
mean, I'll watch. He had my favorite scene in Avengers Endgame, though. Like that cool like samurai fight. I thought that was my favorite action scene in the movie.
And
I
they
thought
said
that-
he's going to be more like that in the show than
I like
Hawkeye.
that.
He's going to be more Ronin.
Yeah, cool.
Well, and they said they'd explore his time as Ronin too. They'd
Right.
be exploring more of that. So I think it's great, honestly. Like for fans of the MCU, I think doing these Disney Plus shows, and I think that's why they even put it into the calendar. Because I remember seeing that calendar at first when they showed it, and I was like, Jesus Christ, how many movies are they releasing? But then I was like, oh, it's the Disney Plus
Yeah,
show.
the movie release dates are actually relatively disciplined. You got 2 in 2020, then you got 3 in 2021, which isn't
Yeah.
to me over the top.
No, that's
You know.
it's fair, but I think that like the Disney Plus stuff will definitely bookend nicely with all of that, and ultimately expand their brand. It's just smart. It's smart business. It's smart for creativity in terms of like continuing to build this massively connected universe. And I love the DC films, but when you're talking about uh, really pulling off this interconnected shit,
Hmm.
Marvel's they're the fucking textbook example
Well,
of how to
that's
do
what
it.
everybody wants to be. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But with the Marvel stuff with the movies, it'll be interesting to see how the films are are received. Like, I mean, I'm sure that Black Widow is going to be huge, and I'm sure that Thor is going to be huge, and I'm sure that oh yeah, I mean, I think that Thor and Black Widow are both kind of guaranteed to be massive. But I'm curious to see how like a Doctor Strange sequel will do, or how Shang-Chi will do, or even the Eternals. The Eternals probably will do well because it's Angelina Jolie as well. I think is a really smart piece of casting. But it'll be interesting to see how those movies do. But then again, you can never really discount them though, because Captain Marvel was huge and Black Panther was huge, and
I mean, even Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, people.
Yeah.
I remember talking to Jimmy O, and Jimmy O's like, he was very against it before it came out, and he's like, there's a talking raccoon in it. That guy looks stupid. And I was like, I don't know, man. I think it looks pretty great. We're gonna love it.
The world, I mean, interesting. I mean, you can never really underestimate Marvel. It's always a little.
I mean, listen, I hated Captain Marvel, but I still saw it twice. So
of course,
there it is. I hate the movie. I don't like it at all. I don't even own it. But I still paid to see it twice.
You're not gonna not go because it also connects to everything else. It's like, well, I have to go see it. So it's kind of like that at this point.
They kind of got their hooks in us in that way. So
Shang-Chi
but anyways,
casting though. I like the fact that it's a nice Canadian boy, Simu Liu, and it was interesting because he was like giving them shit on Twitter like 6 months ago. He's like, you guys never cast ethnic leads, and bop, 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 bop. And then he wrote on Twitter the other day, so he retweeted that, and he just wrote below it, well, shit. And then he got.
I mean, honestly, like,
Tony Lung,
there's definitely a diversity push going for this next phase, which is fine. And I feel like there's plenty spread around for everybody.
There's something for everybody.
So I don't really see
something for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people that are kind of complaining about it and blah blah blah.
I'm not gonna go see a Blade movie with Mahershala Ali. It's like, fuck, man, first in line. Are you kidding?
I think everybody was excited about that, and I remember like that didn't catch me off guard. It was cool that he came out, but that had been rumored for a while. I think everybody was pretty stunned when Natalie Portman came out, and that they kept that quiet for 9 months. And I thought she hated it and didn't want anything to do with the MCU.
Yeah, that was the impression I had too, was that Natalie Portman was probably like annoyed or like whatever. But
I felt that something might be up though when she turned up in Endgame. Like, I was thinking it was either like contractually obligated or that like she was back in somehow. Like there was something going on.
Well, and plus the scene that she had in Endgame was rather like, just kind of blah. Like it was just like she was just there, almost like you could have had a background player do it. It was kind of like, oh, I'm surprised she even came in for that.
I'm assuming though she must have gotten won over by Taika Waititi being involved. I mean, I think he's kind of a bit of a visionary director, and I think people genuinely want to work with him. And it's fun. I mean, I watched the Jojo Rabbit trailer this week, and honestly, when I heard the idea for the movie, I thought it was the stupidest sounding fucking movie ever. Taika Waititi is as Hitler as this Nazi youth kid's imaginary friend, but. And I heard it was coming to TIFF, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm gonna have to see it, and of course, but then I watched the trailer, and I'm like, oh fuck yeah, this is gonna be great.
Yeah, I just love Taika's work. I love what we do in the shadows. I love Hunt for the Wilder People.
Hunt for the Wilder People.
I love Thor Ragnarok.
So. I keep wanting to show Hunt for the Wilder People to my girlfriend, but there's this dog scene that's gonna destroy her though. She's gonna be so upset.
She'll love Ricky Baker.
She's gonna be so upset.
Ricky Baker.
The dog scene.
It says Caucasian, but he got that wrong because obviously you're white. I love that movie's so hilarious.
That is honestly one of the best soundtracks the last couple of years too.
I don't even remember the soundtrack.
Oh, the soundtrack's amazing. Oh, it's such
enjoy the movie.
I remember seeing that at Sundance too, though. There was no buzz on it at all or anything like that, and it was kind of one of those movies. It was in like a weird section too. It wasn't like one of the really prominent sections. And I remember going to see it. I was like, oh, I really liked What We Do in the Shadows. Yeah, I'm going to go see it. And Sam Neill. I saw Sam Neill in the lobby of the hotel. I'm like, fuck yeah, Sam Neill. So I went to see it and ended up, I think it was like the only 10 on 10 I think I gave that year at Sundance. Like it was fantastic. It was just a great movie.
It's a great movie.
Mm-hmm. I still haven't seen the show yet, What We Do in the Shadows, by the way, which I heard is really good.
It's really good.
It is. It's really, really good.
It's just as good as the movie. And I was concerned that the cast wouldn't be able, because it was a totally different cast.
Yeah.
I was concerned that, it doesn't have Taika, it doesn't have oh my God, what's his name?
Jermaine
Oh,
Clement.
Jermaine Clement.
Jermaine, there we go. Jermaine. I was concerned, but the cast is great. It's genuinely hilarious.
Yeah, I'm gonna catch up with it.
It's really funny. So yeah, Natalie Portman will be playing female Thor, which again, this is based on Jason Aaron's run on the comics. Jason Aaron's done a ton of the Thor comics. He's been on it for years now. He did one of the best. I thought for a second when Taika was like, it's based on one of Jason Aaron's stories, and I thought it was going to be God Killer, which is a great fucking. If you're looking for a good Thor story, God Killer is amazing. But then he was like, oh, it's going to be the female Thor, which was the arc that followed after that. But I think it's cool. I think it's going to make for visually, it's going to be cool. But I also think there's some funny irony here. So Tessa Thompson was on stage too, and in the comics, in just this past week, written by Jason Aaron, in War of the Realms, Valkyrie is killed, and Jane Foster becomes the new Valkyrie. And I just bought Valkyrie #1 this week that has Jane Foster as Valkyrie. So it's just kind of funny, ironic, weird that like it's almost like they've still got some catching up to do in terms of if they actually would do that.
Yeah,
the comics
who knows?
Movies. But I just thought that was kind of funny that like, oh, she's gonna be female Thor. It's like, well, actually, she's Valkyrie now. But okay, cool, whatever.
I really like Tessa Thompson. I hated Men in Black, whatever it was. Men in Black. I forget the title.
International.
Yeah,
I forget the title.
Oh, it's just so bad. Oh my god.
I'm actually doing a promotion with them. They had this.
I mean, it was great. It was great. It was really good.
No. The home video department reached out and they're looking for some blogger types that have kids, and they had oh my god, my brain's not working here. It's still early. They have this thing where they have kids that can design their own plushie, and they wanted to have a design your own alien. Mm-hmm. So my kid, I had him draw his version of an alien creature that would be in Men in Black, and then they're gonna have the plushie made. Oh. So I think that was kind of cool, fun. I would love that fun stuff, man. Like if somebody if a studio wants to send me something to for me to hawk it on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or for JoBlo, for whatever, it's just fun stuff. It's good promotion stuff, and it's just I love doing that shit. It's
for me fun. The thing that gets me is usually an awards season when you're in the guilds and sometimes you get nice posters. The framed posters I really like, especially when one's signed. Like I've got
framed posters.
I've got a really nice framed Roma poster signed by Alfonso Cuarón hanging on my wall right now that I'm looking at. I hope that they send. Awesome. What I'd really like is if they send some of those fake posters from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like Operazione Dynamite.
One of my army buddies sent me. He's a super movie buff, and he listens to podcasts too. My good friend Dave Cox. He sent me. He went to the Alamo Draft House.
Sorry, I had to do this.
He sent me a picture of a film strip that they were giving out at Alamo Draft House that had stills from the movie. From Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, nice.
And Alamo Drafthouse always does cool shit like that.
Yeah, and they have cool posters too.
They sell glasses. They'll have special drinks and menus for their movies. So if there was an Alamo Drafthouse here, that's where I would go majority.
Yeah, we don't have any in Canada, unfortunately.
They're pretty amazing. I've been to the one in Virginia multiple times, and it's a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
Full menu, food is good. Fucking, it's just awesome. So anyways, that's pretty much it for Comic-Con. Although I did actually, Alex, wanted to get your quick rushes on Hush, Batwoman, and Pennyworth, which you've seen.
Yes.
All of them. So what are your thoughts on those lovely gems?
All right, real quick. Batman Hush was awful. No, the comic book it's a pretty recognizable, well-known story arc, and the way that they did the movie, it's just that generic kind of DC animation. It didn't really have too much flair to it, and the voice acting, just Jennifer Morrison was the voice of Catwoman. There was no energy, no chemistry.
Is it Kevin Conroy as Batman?
No, it was Jason O'Mara, who's been doing it for the last few. But I mean, it was very blah. I didn't have much energy to it at all, and they changed the ending from the comic to kind of fit with the animated DC universe, and it just, I don't know, I just didn't feel it at all.
So the Riddler's not the bad guy?
The Riddler is the bad guy, but the way that they reveal it and the connections, because Damian Wayne is a bigger character in the DC animated films, and Nightwing is more substantial, and just the way that the stories have evolved to connect it with it, the way they get to the end point is just different.
Wait, it has Damien in it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's dumb. He wasn't even in the Hush comics.
Yeah, he starts telling his dad how to have protected sex. And then Batman just turns off the Batmobiles. Oh, nope, gotta go. I'm not talking about this.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And it feels like it's just got profanity just to make it a PG-13. It doesn't feel very organic at all. And speaking of inorganic, Batwoman was atrocious.
It looks atrocious. Like the trailers just look awful.
Well, they filmed it in Chicago, so it tries to get some of that connection to the Dark Knight films so that Gotham looks similar, but it just... There's nothing wrong with having a lesbian main character at all, and in some parts it works and it just feels kind of natural, but then there's other places where her lover is now straight and married to a guy, and she's got to deal with the fallout of this secret will she still love me kind of it felt really like a relic from the late 90s. It didn't feel like it should have been out right now. The bright spot, Pennyworth, is, the next thing we are going to get a movie, I guarantee, about Batman's utility belt, because Pennyworth works really well. It has a very it feels like the Agent Carter TV show where it's that retro pulpy feel.
Oh, yeah.
But it has a Guy Ritchie feel to it, so it's very violent. Because it's on Epix, there's a lot of profanity, there's a fair amount of nudity, and there's some pretty gory disembowelments involved. But for the most part, it feels like its own show. There was a couple parts where it dips in and feels a little bit like the cheesy Gotham that was on Fox. But overall,
it feels like a lot of those shows, they just kind of, it's like they just can't get past the fact that it all revolves around Batman. Like Gotham was like, it felt like it started as like, well, we're going to do everything we can to avoid anything Batman wise. We'll have like young Bruce Wayne, but they got to the point where like, well, you just can't escape it. Like you have to get towards it. And they like pulled out every fucking rogue from his rogues gallery.
And
like you just can't.
Yeah, and Pennyworth has Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne, but it's before they've met, and they don't even meet in the first few episodes. They're completely independent of one another. Their paths don't cross, but you can tell that it's going to be there, but it's not like Gotham where they're going to shoehorn it in at some point. I mean, the series, however long it ends up airing, maybe the final episodes will be Alfred becoming the butler kind of thing. But for now, it is so independent of everything else. It feels like its own show, and it could.
But you like it.
I do like it. It could easily not be a Batman show, and it would still be a fun show to watch.
I foresee it now. The final episode of the season is going to be Martha saying, "I'm pregnant. It's a bat boy." She's going to rub her belly.
Speaking of bat stuff, by the way, this is a little bit off topic, but they announced the lineup for TIFF this week, and in the official competition is the Joker, and it's also playing in the main competition at Venice. And what's really interesting,
I was gonna say it's Venice too. Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that Todd Phillips went on and he said that they offered him an out of competition slot, which is usually where the movies that are like the big premieres will go. And he said no. He says, if I'm going, I believe that this is my best movie, and that it needs to be in competition. And Venice was with it. I mean, that's confident, man. And I'm really hoping it's a great movie. I mean,
outside of Jared Leto, like, Nicholson and fucking Ledger both slayed it as Joker. It's a ripe role.
I mean, if
it's a role that you can really just go fucking. And I think really Leto he just didn't really get the screen time that he needed to flesh out his Joker. I think it probably is really great, like all the shit that's on the cutting room floor. But those guys, like, just having that's like a known role where you can just go fucking crazy and really just act your ass off, because it's it's unhinged.
If it's going though to TIFF and to Venice, I mean, you have to think that it's probably a really good movie. I mean, TIFF doesn't just let in crap though, especially not in like the special presentations.
Predator.
Well, now that was Midnight Madness though. Midnight Madness is very different. So Midnight Madness, they'll just show stuff to sell tickets to the fanboys. I mean, that's what if Joker had been a Midnight Madness title, I wouldn't necessarily think that it was great. But the fact that it's in that it's a gala and stuff is
Yeah.
pretty.
I
I'm
definitely don't
sure
take
it's gonna be
Midnight
good.
Madness at TIFF seriously anymore after The Predator, because that movie is fucking
I
ass.
mean, Midnight Madness is always really like a mixed bag. You sometimes get they kind of schedule Midnight Madness to sell tickets, and I can kind of understand it. And The Predator did sell a lot of tickets, but they've also shown like Blair Witch was there, and not great movies, but then they showed some really good movies too, like Brawl and Cell Block 99. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's always kind of a coin toss. It's really what the fans want to see, and it was an opening night thing. But Midnight Madness has never been considered like really tightly, you know, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's not curated like the rest of the festival is.
So, Chris, is what you're saying that a film festival premiere is going to be indicative of how good a movie could potentially be?
Not necessarily, but the thing is, if it's getting a film festival premiere, it means that the studio has got a lot of confidence in it. TIFF probably would have scheduled it anyway. Just the
I don't
fact that
know.
they
I
just
saw Corporate
set the show.
Animals at
No, but
Sundance, and that was awesome.
that was a Sundance midnight movie though. That's another thing that it's
We
not.
didn't
I
see it
see.
at midnight. We saw
No,
it in
it
the
was
afternoon.
but they don't always show them at midnight. They show them after. It was part of the midnight selection.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of those movies, aren't necessarily great. And Sundance and TIFF are both always a mixed bag in terms of quality. I've seen some pretty bad movies at TIFF too, but it's the fact that the studio is sending it to TIFF that really tells me that they've got a lot of confidence in it. And a major studio doesn't usually send a movie to the film festivals unless they figure that people are going to
Well, they
really
could
like
also be using it as a testing ground too. Like, maybe they don't know what they have, because some of those movies, like, the truth is, like, say something like Corporate Animals was,
Corporate
it's not
Animals
good,
wasn't, but the
but
thing about Corporate Animals, though, you have to realize, though, it was there because it was an independent film that was trying to get distribution, and
right.
it
That's what
really
I'm saying.
is,
Like, there's movies that go there for that as
and
well.
it got
Like,
nothing, and
see what
nobody,
happens.
yeah, nobody wanted it, and it ended up selling to this really kind of like low budget gang. But that director had done good movies before, so I can kind of see why it got in. But then sometimes movies are received so poorly at Sundance or at TIFF that the release strategy changes. Like a good example of that was at Sundance this year. I saw this movie Wounds with Armie Hammer and Dakota Johnson,
Oh yeah.
and it was supposed to be like a 3,000 screen Annapurna movie that was going to come out in the wintertime. It was going to be like a major release, and it was reviled at the festival. It
Yeah.
got really
People didn't
bad
like it.
Yeah, I got really bad reviews. I didn't like it at all, and they ended up dumping it and selling it to Netflix.
Bum bum
I
bum.
mean, that's what happens sometimes, and it was anyway. I really do have an optimistic feeling about the Joker. I think it's going to be really good, especially if it's going to Venice too and Telluride. I mean, the fact that it's going to Telluride probably says a lot too, because Telluride is very, very carefully programmed.
Well, it'll be telling when we get those first reviews. That's for sure.
I'm pretty optimistic about it though. I'm thinking it's going to be really good.
So, speaking of movies that made their debut at a film festival, a little movie called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood came out this week. Chris, you loved it. You gave it a 10 on 10,
And I've already seen it twice.
and you've seen it twice.
I saw it and that's very rare for me. But I saw it on Tuesday morning at the press screening, and I went back on Wednesday night with some friends and my girlfriend. And yeah, I mean, I absolutely loved it. The thing is, though, I'll admit, a Tarantino fan, like a real hardcore Tarantino fan. I was doing my rankings of his movies, and there's really not a Tarantino movie that I didn't unreservedly love. There are some that are better than others, but I do think that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is close to the top of the pantheon. But I also have a thing. I love that era, and I'm very fascinated and interested in the stories behind that era. And there's two books that I feel like if people read, they'd really get an extra appreciation of. It would be called The Studio and Pictures of a Revolution, because it was an interesting year, because it was really a year that everything kind of changed. And the Manson family murders are widely considered to be the moment that kind of changed Hollywood from being this kind of town where anything goes and this kind of Tower of Babel almost, to something more, this grittier, more cynical place that we saw come of age in the 70s, and I don't know. Anyway, I really loved it. I thought that DiCaprio gave one of my favorite performances of his ever in it. I think he's so underrated when it comes to comedy and pathos too. He was so good in that movie as Rick Dalton, especially his scenes with the kid Julia Butters. Loved Brad Pitt as Cliff Booth. Just a really badass comeback role for him. I like him now that he's getting a little bit older too and weathered. He's totally cool in the movie. I loved everything about it. Margot Robbie I thought was great in her role, perfect as Sharon Tate. I liked Margaret Qualley a lot. Really, really, really good movie, man. I loved it unreservedly. I thought it's my favorite movie of the year. It's the only thing that comes even close to it that I've seen this year is probably The Art of Self-Defense. And Blinded by the Light is also really good. But I mean, I can't imagine it not being at the top of my list for the end of the year, unless The Irishman comes out and totally blows me away.
Well, hopefully it does.
Yeah.
I did not love it.
Yeah.
Like you did. I found myself throughout the first like 2 hours of the movie, like I was enjoying the ride, but almost like that's pretty much just what it was. Like there were literally scenes of people driving that went
Yep.
on for minutes.
Yeah, it's a hangout.
And I kept thinking, okay, this is gonna go somewhere. Like it's gonna lead to something. There's a reason that I'm sitting in this car for literally 2 to 3 minutes at a time. And then they would just show up to the location and that would just be it. And I was kind of like, what was that? Like, why did I need to see Brad Pitt driving for 3 minutes? Or why did I need to see the behind the over the shoulder cam of both Brad Pitt and Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski and everybody driving? Like, I don't get that. I felt like it was leading me to something, but it never got there. And it just felt like if you cut out the driving scenes, you'd lose about fucking 15 minutes of the movie right there.
Easily. Yeah. And, you know, I didn't love it either. I think that I'm a hardcore Tarantino fan as well. And I even went back. They were giving away fake magazines at the theater when I saw it.
Oh, that's cool.
It looks like an old 1960s like Heartthrob magazine with fake ads in it.
Oh, but man, I want one.
If I was going to rank it in all of his films, I'd put it dead last. And
wow.
I think, and I well, you know, and the whole thing is that the driving thing, I get it. It felt like he had 3 movie ideas, one for Rick Dalton, one for Cliff, and one for Sharon Tate, and he couldn't figure out how to pull them together. And the first half of the movie, then we get that one quick voiceover, and I'm like, oh, it's going to be that through the film, and then you don't hear it again for 2 hours, and then after the 6 month later jump, we get all the voiceover again. And Brad Pitt, I think, was the highlight. DiCaprio was great in his role. And I understand why they have the Sharon Tate story, but it just feels that half the time she was on screen, she was either dancing or she's sitting in a movie theater. And I get that they're showing as his career's downsliding, hers is going up. And it just, I don't know.
They were kind of showing like her, I get it. I just wasn't invested in it. Like it just felt like, it really, really felt like, you know, Tarantino was just being indulgent in so much of the film. And I get that some people are just like, oh, but I loved it. And I can understand why people would love it. I felt it was indulgent. Like I was just
I mean,
why is this going on for so long? Like
how many feet shots do we need? So many feet in this movie. I know
really was a lot of feet.
Well,
they're all dirty feet.
But let me ask you though, do you guys watch American Graffiti and wonder why people are driving around so long in the movie?
That's a car movie.
Yeah, but I mean, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a hangout movie, and everybody's been complaining about the car scenes. There's not a lot of
there's a lot.
You're getting the atmosphere of the town though, of LA, what it was like back then.
I know, but after the first 3 times I got it.
I don't know. It's weird. It's weird how people can just kind of look at something completely differently, and like my reaction to the movie is so significantly different from yours. I mean, it's interesting because you know, at the same time, I didn't hate the movie at all. I had a good time with it, and I also agree with Alex. I think Brad Pitt is the showcase here. Like I really feel like this is the best role he's had in years. To me, though,
and I loved his character. I loved his character of Cliff. I thought he was like a very compelling, interesting character. But at the same time, I wish that a little more would have been revealed, like with him and his wife.
Yeah, but, you know, I feel like you do that though, and you're just getting a conventional film though, and that's what I like about Tarantino is that it's very unconventional. I like when he takes risk. I like that he doesn't do anything that would be considered kind of normal storytelling. I like it when Tarantino is really bold and experimental, and I find that, you know, that was a good thing about this movie. You know, I go to see something like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I don't want your typical Hollywood blockbuster. Like I get that every weekend. It's great. And it's a great form, but when I go to see a Tarantino movie, I really want him kind of off the chain and doing his thing and being unique. And I think he's such a unique voice, and it's such a unique film. Even the
agree
stuff
with
that
It's
you guys are
interesting that
complaining about.
we give Tarantino a pass for like doing stuff that you would otherwise yell at people about, like you don't know anything about a 3 act structure or your story's fucked and this is blah blah. But if Tarantino does it, everybody like just gives him a pass.
But there's a
Like for
very
me
clear
personally, like
three act structure in the movie, though. There's a
that
very
six
clear three
month
act structure.
jump though in that the third, it doesn't really add up. Like it jumps 6 months and everything is like completely different and all this other stuff. And it's, oh, now he's married, he's got different hair, and he's like, Italian movie star, and it just like the jump, it just felt disjointed when you're
That
like,
was, I mean, the thing
it
is,
built
that
from
was
like a 2 night structure and then they jump 6 months to another night. I was just kind of like, I was
that's
like, wow.
really what was going on in the era, though, for a lot of these guys. Though that was the thing, these cowboy actors. If you look up some of them, some of their real life stories, what happened to them, that was what they did, though. When
I
they
understand
kind of
all that,
watched
but I
them on
just don't
TV,
understand the jump.
they went to Italy, and then they went and they had this weird little parallel career for a couple months, and then they came back, and the thing is, when they emerged, even if it was only 6 months later, everything had changed so much because that's how the era was going. Everything was changing literally day to day to day, and within a 6 months time, if you read that book about what was going on in the movies and in the forum in that era, it was literally at the beginning of the year you could get something like Hello Dolly or whatever that would be a big hit, with Streisand, or Funny Girl or whatever. Then at the end of the year, suddenly Easy Rider is the thing, and that's all the people want to see, and everything's changed. And then these actors that were doing one thing suddenly come back and they have literally no careers. They've just evaporated overnight because they were in Italy doing these kind of schlocky B movies, and suddenly they have no career.
But if that was the focus of the movie, that would be different. But it goes from that, and we're seeing him have his meltdown in his trailer, to cutting to the really great tense scene at the ranch where he's going in there, and I really didn't know what to expect. But you've got that, and then you're cutting to Sharon Tate spending almost the running time of a movie sitting in a movie theater, and it cuts back and forth. If it felt like if you had completely cut out the entire Sharon Tate storyline, it might have been a stronger movie. You could have cut any of the 3 stories and it would have worked.
But the thing is, first of all, when she's in the movie theater, I mean, that's clearly Tarantino's tribute to Sharon Tate, because the footage that you're seeing from the Wrecking Crew, you're watching the real
Sharon Tate.
Yeah, you're not watching her doing Sharon Tate. You're watching the real Sharon Tate, and it's basically his tribute to what a talented person she was, and how all we know about her is the fact that she's this victim of Charles Manson. That's all we think about when we see her. But there was actually a talented, compassionate person there, and he's trying to depict that. But if you've ever read about what Tarantino's idea of this was that he really viewed the murder of Sharon Tate by the Manson family as the moment that everything changed. And the whole title is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's a fairy tale, and it's even got like fairy tale music at the end. And he's saying, this is the way it should have been. Everything in this world where, that's how things end, everything is totally different, right? The Hollywood that kind of emerged in the 70s doesn't necessarily emerge that way. And I don't know, to me, it was everything that you guys are pointing out is not liking about the movie are probably reasons that I love it. Like, it was just, it's weird. I feel very strongly about it. It was just like a perfect film for me. And I've seen it twice and I loved it. But
yeah,
I have a little story.
Not perfect for me.
I have a little story for you guys. Well, that's the interesting thing, though, because, you can look at it from a different point of view and subjectively.
I feel like and I had a concern that this was going to be another revisionist take, just like Inglourious Bastards, and it was.
It is,
and I don't think that does service to what actually happened. I mean, like you said, the way it should have been, like, but that's not reality. That's not like anything should or could.
But it's a fairy tale, though. It's a fairy tale.
Yeah, but the reality of it is something more, and I feel like it's kind of a disservice to like what really happened. And I kind of felt like they were going to go towards that when he walks through the gates at the end. Like maybe they were going to show, other Manson family people walking up to the house.
See, I never thought for a second that they were going to have her. I mean, I don't want to.
I didn't think we were going to see her. I didn't think we were necessarily going to see her die in the film. I just felt like, is this going to be another thing where it's like a fantasy? That's what Inglourious Bastards was, and I love Inglourious Bastards.
I never for a second.
By the end, I was like,
I never for a second thought that in the Tarantino fantasy version of the movie that the Manson family was going to end up killing Tate and.
Well, I figured they would have Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio fight them, and they did. And that was, I mean, listen, that was an entertaining scene, but it was almost like a B movie kind of like action scene where Brad Pitt's like smashing their entire faces into the like everything in the house, the dogs chewing them up, and then DiCaprio gets that fucking flamethrower. I mean, it was hilarious. I laughed my ass off. I thought it was great.
You have to admit, though, I mean, that is bold, innovative filmmaking, though, and you won't see anything like it in theaters for the rest of the year, for years to come, probably until the Tarantino does his next movie.
I wouldn't call it bold. Look, I think it's an interesting film. I think it's a weird film more than anything. I just think it's very odd and it's entertaining as fuck. And if you're a Tarantino fan, you have to go see it. I would never tell anybody not to go see it. I'm not in love with it. And here's the thing. People get really wrapped up in this, and they're like, "Oh, you said you hated it, or
yeah,
you didn't
it's
like
true.
it."
You could see it again in a couple months, and
in
totally
years, in 5 years, I may love Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
And right even now, if I rank it as my least favorite Tarantino, that's still heads and tails above most movies out there.
Yeah, like the worst Tarantino movie is still better
than
anything else. And for me, that's Death Proof. I think Death Proof is.
Yeah, I would probably be my least favorite of his too, but I still like it. But anyway, I have an interesting story to tell you guys. So, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Tim Oliphant in the movie. Okay, he plays this actor named James Stacey, who played Johnny Madrid on the show called Lancer, and that's a real TV show. And he's playing the real actor, just like Luke Perry played this actor Wayne Maunder. And Luke Perry nailed this actor, by the way, did it perfectly. Just the voice, because the guy had a very distinctive voice. And anyway, but it was a real show, Lancer, and it was directed by Sam Wanamaker, like in the movie. The story that they're doing isn't exactly like the episode that aired. But anyway, the actor that Tim Oliphant plays in the movie, James Stacey, at the end of the film, or at the end of his scene in the film, you see him go away on a motorcycle, right? So what happened to this actor in real life was a couple of years after Lancer got canceled, he was clipped by a drunk driver when he was tearing around on his motorcycle with his girlfriend in the back. And he survived, but he ended up being a double amputee. He lost his left arm and his left leg.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, so what happened was he ended up becoming kind of a cause célèbre in Hollywood, and he continued acting. And he got a lot of really prominent roles after that, and he won an Emmy, and he was considered, his acting talent was actually, if anything, almost improved by the accident in a weird way, because he gave some amazing performances, but he was a horrible alcoholic, horrible alcoholic, and apparently very kind of deranged. Years later, he retires. His last role is, have you guys seen FX2?
Yeah. No. It's been a long time. And
FX2 at the beginning has this like robot monster with like a fake arm and a fake leg that's in the movie within the movie. That's James Stacey. That was his last role. And what happened with him is he retired, and a couple of years later, he got arrested for child molestation. He was a child molester. Yeah, and he was guilty. And he ended up going to Chino for 6 years.
Wow.
And there's a story about him online getting the shit kicked out of him by like this neo-Nazi gang, and it's really graphic. And he got out eventually, but he was on the sex offenders list for the rest of his life, and he died about a year ago.
Damn.
Same. And then the actor that Luke Perry played in the movie died almost exactly the same time as Luke Perry. Just died recently. Yeah, very strange. It's just, there's just a lot of interesting context to that movie. A lot of interesting little stories. If you want to go to a deep dive and you look up the people that it was based on, there's a lot of really interesting stuff there. George Spahn, that was a real guy as well. He was involved with the Manson family. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
And a lot of the, like Squeaky and stuff like that. Like, those were all real people.
She took a shot at Gerald Ford and ended up in prison.
Yeah. Crazy motherfuckers.
Oh, yeah.
I was actually surprised how little they had of Charles Manson. He had one scene.
What's interesting is that actor is from Justified, and he's playing
Charles Manson in Mindhunters.
Yeah.
Mindhunter.
Yeah.
Yep. Very cool. So, anyways, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Somewhat divisive. I've heard people that love it, people that don't, people that are mixed. But I guess that's kind of the brilliance of Tarantino in that sense. It's good to have a film out there that we can discuss and kind of, take apart, because it's not always that way, sometimes
I'm just really glad it's making money. That's the thing. I'm happy it's doing well.
Well, and that's pretty rare too, because Tarantino is, one thing is, as successful as he is at making interesting films, they're not he's not a big box office guy.
Well, I mean,
And I think that's something that a lot of people kind of don't know.
Hateful Eight didn't do especially well, but Django and Inglourious Basterds both did well, and I think it's probably going to be
They
along
do well,
those.
but they don't do like massive numbers.
Well, I don't think this one's going to do massive numbers either. I mean, it opened to 40 million, which is a very good number, but I mean, I still think at best the movie is going to
like
kind of break
100
even.
mil is, I think
It's going to probably going to break even worldwide, and I think that was all that was almost ever intended, though, right? Like I think it was made. His movies get made because they're art, and it's you have to make art. It can't just all be about money if you want to keep the art form going.
Well, I mean, it's art that makes money. That's
but you do also
one thing that people always are like, oh, it's a cash grab. I'm like, you do realize it's called show business.
Of course,
right?
but you also have to have the occasional thing though that's not just made for cynical reasons though, and I think that Hollywood does do that. I mean, look, if you go to TIFF, you look at the lineup. TIFF's gonna have a lot of great movies. Most of them are not going to break even or make money. It just doesn't really work that way. But they keep making them because it's an art form, and you have to keep making art. But you also have to make, the thing is, as much as people get down about things like, Marvel in these movies, if those types of movies weren't drawing in business, we wouldn't get the other kinds of movies either.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're always going to have a dominant genre that's keeping the business alive.
I just wish that Disney though would put some of the money that they get off of Marvel into making interesting movies. Like I'd love it if they re-upped Touchstone or something like that and started doing those movies again, but I don't think it's ever going to happen at this point.
Nah, I think they're pretty well invested in the showy stuff.
Hopefully they'll keep Fox going at least, but if Ford Ferrari is playing TIFF.
Well, I mean, here's one thing, and
2.5 hours long, by the way. All the running times are out. Ford Ferrari is an epic.
Yeah, how long?
2.5 hours.
Oh, well, that's pretty. Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
But the one thing, with Disney is that they also with acquiring Fox, they've acquired a lot of like R-rated properties like Predator, Alien, all these things, and it's like, what are you gonna do with those?
Yeah.
Are you gonna PG-13 all of these things because they're just not PG-13.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they tried that with Alien and Predator, and it didn't work at all.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm sure we aren't the first to discuss this, but I'm curious to know what their thoughts are in how they're going to transition some of these things, and even like Fox Searchlight has made just so many brilliant films over the years. I'm very curious, and they made a big show at CinemaCon about how they're going to keep Fox Searchlight alive.
I really hope they do. But it's interesting though, even Fox Searchlight, the movie that I saw last night, Ready or Not, is a strange movie to put out under Fox Searchlight's banner, and it feels like before the Disney deal happened, like they were trying to kind of get into that Blumhouse genre a little bit, make these kind of low budget horror movies. And Ready or Not is an example of that. I mean, it's a really, really, really well done horror comedy. I mean, it's totally a comedy too. It's extremely gory and extremely R-rated, but it's hilarious. I mean, I was laughing my ass off throughout. I probably laughed more at that movie than any comedy that I've seen lately. But it's an interesting movie to put out for Fox Searchlight though, because it does not feel like a Fox Searchlight movie at all. It should have just been put out under the Fox banner. But interesting little movie though. Samara Weaving, I think, is going to probably become a pretty big star at some point.
Well, she's been sticking around, so
yeah,
since being
and she was there. She was at Fantasia last night.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that the first screening at?
Yeah, I think it was the world premiere. I mean, they were calling it a special advanced screening, and then where it's screening in Lincoln Center next week, and they're calling that the world premiere, which is weird. It's kind of like that whole thing when Venice gets advanced screenings, but yeah, for all intents and purposes, it was the world premiere.
So one thing I wanted to mention while we were on the Tarantino topic was that he has said just recently that we all know that he's continuously said he's only going to do 10 movies and then retire.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think personally, I don't think he'll ever retire. I think he may take long breaks, but I think he'll be drawn back into it.
I don't think he might stop with movies, but I think that he'll probably work in other forms though. Like I think he'll probably try Netflix or something like that.
That's what I think. He'll switch to TV or do a long form or even documentary something.
Either way, I think he's still going to be making stuff. I don't think he's going to stop. But anyways, we already know that he's been toying with a Star Trek idea, but he just revealed this past week that out of all of the films that he'd ever make a sequel to, the most serious one would be Kill Bill. And he said that he's actually was talking to Uma Thurman about it this past week. about
If you're gonna
doing
do
a
it
third Kill
though,
Bill.
if you're gonna do the daughter of Elle Driver though, I mean, you've got the perfect actress for it. It's Maya Hawke who's in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you know, and who was great on Stranger Things, legit actress, and actually Uma Thurman's daughter. So she would be perfect. I mean, if they're gonna do it.
Maybe that's the thing, and then you could have Vernita Green's daughter
Mm-hmm.
out for revenge. Maybe she even kills the bride. You know, it's something. Again, like Tarantino likes to do these weird jumps, so why not? And I think it would fit well within his his kind of film upbringing. Like he loves like the old martial arts films, which Kill Bill is an ode to.
Yeah.
And they would do stuff like that all the times where they would like jump,
Sure.
years forward, and all of a sudden there's like, oh, there's another one of these movies with these characters, and now it's this and that, and so so's out for revenge, and blah blah
Yeah,
blah.
the
blah,
new
blah.
one-armed swordsman,
Yeah,
and the new one-armed swordsman. But
but I mean, and he set it up too. Like you could even have, and I'm sure and people have already speculated on this, but you could have Elle Driver being like the blind master training Vernita Green's daughter to get revenge, and there's just so many ways you could go in that kind of cheesy, kung fu B movie way
um,
and make something great. You could call it Kill the Bride or something. It doesn't even
what
obviously it wouldn't be Kill Bill.
what I didn't realize about Tarantino, and I just was reading this on Hollywood Reporter, said, do you know that he owns the copyright to all of his movies, right? And that was always part of his deal with whatever studio that he signed on for, because what he doesn't want is he doesn't want anybody doing remakes or sequels to his movies.
Yeah,
Because
smart,
he's afraid that they're going to do like a Reservoir Dogs spinoff or a Pulp Fiction spinoff that he wouldn't be involved in. And I think the one that he's always said that it was the biggest concern for him was Kill Bill, because if somebody else owned the copyright, you damn right we'd be getting a Kill Bill spinoff, that he wouldn't be involved in. And it's always been part of his deal that he has to have copyright control over the characters. And it was always with the Weinsteins, and that was why apparently he had to go to Sony, because Warner Brothers wanted him, but they wouldn't give him the copyright. And he said he doesn't want a Cliff Booth spinoff or something like that. It's got to be, so he has the rights to all these characters. Same thing as he's been talking about doing a couple episodes of Bounty Law for Netflix, right? And that's his property though. It won't have to be through Sony. He could do it for Netflix, even though it was a Columbia movie. He owns the copyright.
Well, that's why I think if he was going to do a Kill Bill sequel, that would be something that maybe he does. If he does 10 movies and stops, that would be something he could do as a series.
Sure.
And do that in a long format instead of making it a big feature film.
Yeah.
Because if he does Star Trek, if he even ends up doing that, that might be because each of his movies hits a different genre and hits a different type of filmmaking. And he's never done that big budget studio tentpole type of movie, which could be with Star Trek. So if he decides he does truly want to end with 10 and then explore something else, Kill Bill would be one of the few things he could really explore as a series.
Sure.
Do you think there's going to be a lot of like really long scenes of spaceships flying in the Star Trek movie?
With anachronistic music playing in the background?
I mean, they already do that though in the J.J. Abrams movies. Though he's listening to friggin'
That's classical music, though.
Oh, listen to Beastie Boys.
I love it. So one thing I also wanted to talk about that I just fucking blasted through. We're talking about long form TV entertainment. I binged The Boys since it debuted Friday. Finished it last night.
Boys, eh?
Binged on The Boys. I know I had to be careful every time I tweeted about that. I was like, I don't want this to come off in the wrong way. So a little history. Garth Ennis, who also wrote Preacher, he wrote Punisher for a while. Great writer, very kind of nihilistic and awesome at the same time. Wrote The Boys with artist Eric Robertson drawing it. And it was always, to me, I saw it on the shelf. I probably have a handful of issues. I think I have like 5 or 6. I never like got fully invested into it. And honestly, one of the reasons I got it was because it was, kind of this extreme superhero. It's basically like a grittier, more fucked up version of Watchmen. So I had a few issues, and it's very extreme, and a lot of it you could not even adapt on TV. It's that extreme. But that said, I had not huge expectations for The Boys. I was not like, oh man, this is going to be so fucking great. I was like, because the truth is, I was disappointed in what Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg did with Preacher. Mm-hmm. I feel like they fucked it up, to be honest. It never should have been what it was. It should have been a TV show, but the way they handled it was just not at all what I wanted.
I remember it started off okay, but it just abandoned it halfway through the season.
it became something completely different than what the comic is, and I just feel like they lost the pulse of it completely. So I don't have as much invested in the boys as far as like knowledge of the comics, so I have to like put that out there. But I was hooked. Like
Mhm.
I loved the show. The actors I felt were all, it's like some of the best work that most of the actors, like Jesse Usher, who I've always just kind of been like, whatever. It's like his best work. He's never done anything this good.
Oh, I
It's great
liked him
to
in
see.
Shaft. I
Yeah,
liked
he
him in
was good in
Shaft, though.
Shaft.
See, I
Yeah.
didn't see Shaft, but I mean, he I feel like he was just so great in The Boys. Like he shows a range, like I'm surprised, like honestly, genuinely shocked. I was watching it and I was like, this is has way more depth and nuance than I expected. I really expected it to be a schlock fest. Like I thought it was just gonna be a bunch of like extreme blood, and that is there. It
Yeah,
is.
Amazon is always hit and miss for me.
This is, for me, it's a hit, and I think Alex, I think you were mixed. Is that
I
accurate?
yeah, I wasn't a big fan. I think that the production values, it just feels like, what if it feels like Watchmen if it were directed by the guy who did The Tick.
Ooh.
It felt cheap to me. The costumes, it just looked very cheap for how much money they put into making it. And while I liked Carl Urban as Billy Butcher, I thought he was really good. And I think that none of the superheroes really came off as anything worth watching. It just felt very, I don't know. I just, there were a couple of really great scenes with Homelander. I think that was one of the few that I liked in the seven, but I just, I watched it and it just felt like it could have been a lot more than it was. I thought the comic was much, much better.
Interesting. See, and I'm not as invested in the comic, so for me though, I didn't get the cheap aspect at all. I thought it looked great. I was actually surprised at some of the effects being as good as they were, and maybe I thought it was gonna look cheaper. So I guess that's certainly part of it. Um, but what's his name? Anthony Starr, who plays Homelander, I think is great. I
I
think he
Yes.
really
is just
liked.
awesome.
Did you ever watch Banshee?
No, I did not. He was in
Uh,
Banshee, right?
yeah, he was great on Banshee.
Yeah, he is so good in this. And here's the thing: like Homelander starts off as kind of a character that you think, oh, he's just like this fucking, just kind of psychopath. But there's like so much more to him. And there was even a point where I'm like, oh, maybe he's not a bad guy, but he is a bad guy. And I did not expect as much nuance as I got with this show. I really like Jack Quaid as Huey Campbell,
Yeah, he was good.
who in the comics is basically, he looks exactly like my brain's not working again, Simon Pegg. And then Simon Pegg actually plays his father in this with an American accent, which is always interesting to hear. I think Chase Crawford is great as the Deep. I think, again, like these characters, I thought they're just going to be like one-off jokes, but they actually get into them. And like, there's a part where Chase Crawford, he plays basically like the Aquaman of the group, and they're all like basically the Justice League, like all
Hmm.
these characters, but it's like a takedown of them all. And there's a scene where Chase Crawford, he's called the Deep, brings a chick back to his apartment, and she's like, "I want to see it." And I was like, "Oh, like she wanted to see his dick, but she didn't want to see his dick. She wanted to see his gills, which he has on his rib cage, which is really creepy." And then the whole scene where she's like sticking her finger in his gills while she's rubbing her pussy and getting off, and I just thought that was fucking crazy. There's like so many wild scenes like that are just like nuts.
That doesn't sound like a nice boy show. It sounds like a bad boy show.
It is a bad boy show. I also really like Aaron Moriarty. I think she's great
Aaron Moriarty was really good in that Mel Gibson movie Bloodfather,
Bloodfather. Yeah.
and she's great in this movie that's just getting a really small release at the end of the month called Driven, about John DeLorean. She's
Oh
good
yeah,
in
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, she's good in that.
I think she's just really great, and I just really enjoyed it. And I like Carl Urban, of course. He's just he's always good. But anyways, I binged it. It was 8 episodes. I blasted through it. I just loved it. I thought it was so much better than it deserved to be.
And it just got renewed for a season two.
Yeah, and honestly, like if season 2 was on there, I would have just kept watching. So,
Hmm.
Alex had a different take, but that's my take. I loved it, so I highly recommend it. It's only 8 episodes too, so it's a mild investment, but I loved it. I'm
The-
really surprised and shocked at how much I loved it because I didn't expect it. I kind of thought I'd watch episode 1 and I'd
Mhm.
be like, it's just like Preacher, fuck this, and it's not.
The show that I'm really into this season is do either of you guys watch Yellowstone with Kevin Costner? The Taylor
No,
Sheridan
I
show?
want to binge it. I
Oh,
really
man.
I
want to
watch
watch
it.
it, but I
That
haven't.
that is a good show, and the thing is, it's always Paramount Network. The distribution is so weird for that though, because we don't even get it in Canada. But I get screeners from the studio. They send me the links, and I've had to go through it really slowly because it's only shows once per week. But they send me all the entire season except for the last episode. So I've been trying to, step back on watching it. And my girlfriend really likes it too. We both really enjoy it, and so season 1 never came out in Canada, but the DVD came out. So I ended up buying it for my parents because I figured that they'd probably really like it. And they binged through it in like 2 days or something like that. And like, oh, so season 2 is out? When is it coming out? I'm like, yeah, you're not going to see it for a year. And they were really upset. And they were both very upset. We're like, well, we might not be alive that long. No, but they really wanted it. Yeah, they were like,
I look forward to catching Yellowstone. I just want to binge it.
oh, I love it. I really
So
love it.
I definitely will. I definitely will check it out eventually.
Do you like it, Alex?
I do. I think that it's got kind of that. It's somewhat of a soap opera feel to it, but the the characters are so good.
I like that it's kind of trashy though. I've always enjoyed that, and it's like a really like heavy duty R-rated version of Dallas, right?
That's exactly what it is.
But with all kinds of shit thrown in, like
Kelly Riley looks really good.
Oh yeah, and then there's the girl.
I love Kelly Riley. She's so awesome.
And
Kevin Costner is just the man.
And there's the girl from Baywatch in it too, and Kelly Rohrbach this season, and there's Luke Grimes is pretty good. Cole Hauser, I think, is probably my favorite character on the show, though. I think he's great.
Yeah, he's really good.
I love the entire show. I love the guy who plays the main guy, the main bad guy. I forget his name. The actor, the Indian actor. I forget his name.
Oh, he was in Hell or High Water.
Yeah, he's in all of his movies. He's in all of his movies. He's great though. He's always really good. And it was hold on, I'm looking that up right now.
Danny Houston is good too.
Yeah, Danny Houston was actually really good in the last episode that I watched.
Gil Birmingham is
Gil Birmingham. Yeah, great actor. But it's a fantastic show. The only thing that's different this season though is Taylor Sheridan didn't direct all the episodes like he did last season, but I feel like it's been pretty.
But he
seamless.
wrote them, yeah.
He did, yeah. He has writing credits on every episode, and he's in it too, kind of. But it's.
My favorite thing that Chris says is when he says "fantastic."
It is fantastic.
Because it's like you have the very specific fantastic. It's fantastic. I love it. I love the way you say it.
I do have to drop before the end of the podcast, but I do want to talk about the unfortunate passing of Rutger Hauer.
Oh man!
Yeah, we forgot to talk about Rutger.
So I've got a Rutger Hauer story. So you say Rutger, I say Rutger, but
always had some fucked up way of saying celebrities' names. Say Guillermo del Toro.
Guillermo del Toro.
Oh no! Say it the way you normally say it.
Guillermo.
So a couple of years ago, though, at Sundance, I met Rutger Hauer. I was just kind of hanging around and whatever. I was walking with my buddy Nick, who crashes with me at the festivals, and then we see this Humvee, right, rocking 80s music, like nothing but a good time, and arm hanging out the window, smoking a cigarette, fucking mane of blonde hair blowing in the wind, wearing sunglasses, unshaven, looks like he just woke up from like a hard night of drinking. Rutger Hauer. And then I was like,
that's awesome.
Man, is that Rutger Hauer? And then he's like, we have to go say hi to him. So we went up to him and I was like, man, Rutger Hauer, I'm a huge fan. He don't want to bother you. And he's like, oh, hi, boys. And he shook our hands. He was the coolest, man. Oh, I love Rutger Hauer. For best movie you never saw, I think probably I've done more Rutger Hauer movies than any other actor in that.
They did Lady Hawk, Blind Fury, Hitcher,
and Nighthawks.
You didn't do my favorite of his movies.
Which, Split Second?
Yeah, I love Split Second.
I've got Split Second in my back pocket. I'm gonna do it at some point. I think I'm gonna do Blind.
I need to revisit. You know what else I like is Wanted Dead or Alive is another.
I like Wanted Dead or Alive has my favorite villain killing scene ever.
Yeah,
but I just don't know if I watched these all fairly recently. Split Second I actually saw in a 35mm print in a film club in Montreal about a year ago. And it holds up. But Wanted Dead or Alive I watched recently, and the thing about Wanted Dead or Alive is the last half hour is great, but the lead up to it is not the best. But it has the single best killing of a bad guy ever.
Oh, where
he's collecting the bounty, and then he gets a $25,000 bounty if the guy is alive, That's his bonus. And then he's leading him, and he's got a grenade in Gene Simmons' mouth, and he's leading him along, and he's like, "Here you go, I'll collect my bonus next week." And then he goes, "Fuck you." And he goes, "You know what?" And he looks at him, he puts his finger in the pin, he goes, "Fuck the bonus." And he pulls the pin, his fucking head blows up. Right?
It's so good. I remember watching that, being
good.
shocked
So
as a
good.
kid, watching
So
Gene
good.
Simmons' head get blown off with a grenade.
But the thing about Rutger Hauer, though, as a leading man, and it's interesting because I have reviewed a lot of his movies for the column, and I really always liked Rutger Hauer growing up. I was always a big fan of his. I even rented like his direct-to-video movies like Omega Doom and stuff like that because I was just a legit fan of his. I think if he had come along 10 years or so later, he would have been bigger because because they tried to kind of make him a romantic lead, and I think he was always a little too intense for that and a little too unconventional. Because you see him, especially in Wanted Dead or Alive, you can really tell because they tried to make him into like kind of a classic Hollywood action star in that movie. But he plays the character like a psychopath. And it's almost like the Hitcher as a good guy. And I love that, but it's also like I just can't see like a mainstream audience going for that. And he was just a little too edgy to ever really be accepted as a conventional leading man. People accepted him more as a villain, but I don't think he wanted to get pigeonholed.
Yeah.
I think he could have had a long career had he just played villains in movies.
Well,
But
how many times did he play a vampire? I mean, I think he's played that. He
yeah,
was great in Buffy, and he did it in. He played
Ownsworth.
Dracula, even. I mean, but yeah, you're right. He did kind of get typecast in those roles. But what I love about Split Second is it almost feels like he was playing a unhinged version of Harrison Ford's character in Blade Runner, which was kind of nice being
Well,
on the flip side of being in Blade Runner.
he always did that though, and that was what was kind of cool about him as an action star. His characters, he usually played them as totally unhinged, and it's the same way in Wanted Dead or Alive. Like he really does play him like a psychopath because at one point in the movie, his best friend and his girlfriend get killed, and he goes fucking insane, like legitimately insane in the movie, and just starts killing people like with the bad guys with like a straight razor, like almost like the villain in a giallo or something like that in a horror movie. And I love that, but I think it also kind of people weren't really willing to accept that kind of gray area when it came to villains back in the 80s. I think they liked to keep it a little bit simpler. You had these clean cut heroes, and it just wasn't really like that with his movies.
And he did have some great leading roles that were, I mean, not a lot of people know about him, but Fatherland is another one that he was awesome in, and that was not his typical role.
Yeah, no, he was very straightforward and sympathetic in Fatherland. I saw Fatherland too, and he was very good as a romantic lead in Ladyhawke. And I think if that movie had been a success, it would have changed his career. It would have been a little different. And it's weird to think that Kurt Russell was supposed to play that part because I couldn't see him in the part. That to me it seems like a tailor-made Rutger Hauer scene. I also think though he's a bit of a victim of the fact that he was in Blade Runner and The Hitcher because he was so good in those movies, iconic.
Yeah, it's hard to topple those, man.
Yeah, and especially The Hitcher. Like I think The Hitcher made him this like iconic figure, in certain circles, and it's a tough movie to kind of not see him as The Hitcher in after you watch it because he's just so vivid in that part. And what's interesting is because I wrote it up for Best Movie You Never Saw just recently, and I was thinking about the remake with Sean Bean, and I was looking at scenes for it because I had never actually seen it. And the famous scene in The Hitcher was when Jennifer Jason Leigh gets ripped apart by the two trucks. In the remake, they switched it so that it's the guy, which I think already makes it lose a little bit of impact. But what they did is they showed it in gruesome detail in the remake. You see him get ripped in half by the truck, and it's really gory.
Yeah.
Nowhere near as disturbing, though, as when you don't show it. Because what you think and what you can imagine is always much worse than reality. And to me, that's, the difference between a good movie and, a shitty movie. Blind Fury, I love too, though. Blind Fury was one of my favorite movies as a kid, and I think I'll do that for the next video edition of Best Movie You Never Saw. I mean, he was, really good at martial arts too. Even though he wasn't a martial artist, he really kind of could do the fight scenes really well. And one of the best blind performances that I've seen in a film. You would have a lot of actors, they would wear sunglasses or something like that and they'd kind of cheat. He did what Al Pacino did in Scent of a Woman, where he never wore sunglasses, only in a couple scenes. He just did a thing with his eyes so that he would unfocus on things. So he was looking at you, but he wasn't looking at you, and I think that that's a really good acting job in that movie that people don't really appreciate. I think and he has to fight too. He has to do all this really complicated choreography, and he's not a martial artist. So that's, to me, that's a difficult role to pull off, and it's Philip Noyce as well, like one of his early movies just before he did Patriot Games, and it's I think that's a solid movie.
Indeed. So it's also interesting that Rutger died in 2019, which is the same year in Blade Runner that he dies.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So I don't know if he planned that or what, but it is a interesting twist of fate.
Another movie that I liked with him too is have either of you ever heard of the Osterman Weekend?
Yes.
Yeah, that's Sam Peckinpah's last movie. Yeah. But you know what's cool about the Osterman Weekend is he's cast so against type in that movie because he's kind of like the intellectual guy, and the real badass physical hero of that movie is Craig T. Nelson.
Craig T. Nelson, baby.
And Craig T. Nelson is super badass in it too, though. Like when he's fighting the guys in the woods and he breaks the guy's neck hand to hand, and he's diving into the pool with there's a lot of really cool action in the movie, but it's all Craig T. Nelson, and he was legit. Craig T. Nelson could have actually been an action star because he had a really cool look to him and he moved really well.
Yeah. Well, and he's great in Action Jackson too.
Well, I mean, his fights in Action Jackson's pretty rough though. Like the matted in.
Shut your fucking mouth.
I do love that movie though. Hot, hotter, hottest.
Barbecue, huh? How do you like
ribs?
All right, gentlemen, I do have to drop, but it has been a pleasure.
Alex, thank you for joining us. We're just gonna do our questions, but thanks for coming on board and providing your perspective.
Anytime.
We appreciate you coming and joining us.
Take care, Alex.
Sexy bear Jew.
That's right. Get my baseball bat. All right, peace out, guys.
Later, man.
Speaking of Action Jackson, though, I was just thinking of the scene in the movie where he's in trouble because he beat up Craig T. Nelson's son, who was like a rapist or something like that. And he goes, You ripped his arm off, and he goes, so what?
Oh,
he had a spare.
I fucking love that
then there's
movie.
like the trash talking cops in the movie too. One of them is Biff from Back to the Future, and the old cop was giving him hell, and he goes, "You jerk off so much in your house, they may as well call it the House of Wax." So good. So good.
Fuck, you're gonna make me watch Action Jackson.
Man,
I know it. If I start talking, there's certain movies where if you start talking about them, I have to watch them. I can't just go on my rest of my day without watching it.
This is classic 80s,
It's so good. It is like,
and
it was meant to be like a blaxploitation type movie, and it really is like a great 80s exploitation.
There should have been like 5 Action Jackson movies.
Oh, for sure, dude.
But then there's also like the henchman, who he thinks like he looks like this really dumb guy, and he's like, "Oh, I'm actually in law school trying to pay off my student debt." And then he comes along and he saves him at the
and then Vanity, she's in it, who was like really hot at the time, but she had a sad fate. Died recently of complications from doing drugs her whole life, and
then you had Sharon
Stone.
My favorite.
So
scene.
Why do they call you
Action? And then the car. And he's like, "Come on!" I love it. It's so good.
Don't shoot me! You want to shoot me? Don't shoot me! Come on!
And then there's the captain giving him shit, but he knows he's the best. They won't let him carry. He's the only cop they won't allow to carry.
Motherfucker!
They won't let him carry a gun because he's too dangerous.
Yet he's still sending him out on these dangerous fucking missions. Like,
homicide investigator. He doesn't get a gun. It's too dangerous.
You can flip over cars and shit.
Yeah. And then when he's fighting Craig T. Nelson, he gets a couple kooks. Now you pissed me off.
And then the music kicks in.
Yeah, it's Herbie. The score is cool. It's Michael Kamen and Herbie Hancock.
It's so
good. And then whenever Action Jackson does something cool, the Herbie Hancock funk kicks in. It's so good. Oh my God, love that movie. Fuck, I'm gonna watch that again.
So just real brief. Avengers Endgame. I feel like we have to mention it because it's a pretty big milestone. Avengers Endgame has now officially beat Avatar as and we can argue the inflation stuff, and even Kevin Feige mentioned it's like, for inflation, blah blah blah. But Avengers Endgame is now the #1 movie of all time. And
I mean, I don't see what the big deal is about that, though. Why everybody always kind of uses it as bragging rights. I mean, to me,
I don't think it's a bragging thing. I just think it's it's a cool milestone, and it's a very rare one for a movie to, frequently Avatar's been top since it came out, so it's been a long time.
It is just evidence of how popular these movies are and how they've captured the imagination of our audience worldwide. Domestically, though, I think Avatar is still number one, isn't it? It's internationally that it's bigger.
Sure, I'd have to double check.
Yeah.
It was just announced, right at Comic-Con. Actually, it was the first thing that Feige had said when he came out. He's like, we just got the numbers in, and
Mhm.
Endgame is now the number one movie of all time, and then he also mentioned, hey, the inflation and all that other stuff, but it's a big deal, and it's cool, and I don't think it's anything needs to be new
It
to
is
be.
weird though if you look at inflation though. I mean, nothing will ever beat Gone with the Wind, but also it was a very different era because they didn't have TV back then. They just they had radio and that was it. So people would go to see movies like almost every night in theaters. Like it dominated the pop culture in a way that nothing ever will now.
Yeah.
People would go see movies every night and they'd see two movies. It would be a double bill just normally. So that's how something like that would do well. It would play for years. It was first run for like years and years and years.
Yeah. So, anyways, it just got me thinking, like, what could topple that? I mean, I guess the quick answer would be Avatar 2, but is Avatar still going to have that same impact when it comes out? It's been so long. Is that going to be enough? Would it be enough?
It's
I
funny
don't.
also. I'm just sorry. I'm just thinking in that era too. Box office numbers were never advertised either, so nobody knew if anything was popular or not. The only way that you'd know is how long something stayed open in theaters. But you never really had that thing where now we're like, oh, it's a flop, so people don't go see it because it doesn't do well at the box office sometimes. And it wasn't really like that back then. You could kind of just go in and you saw what you wanted to see, and it wasn't necessarily a thing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I don't know. It's interesting. I can't like say off the top of my head like, oh yeah, but such and such is coming and that's going to unseat it easily. I can't think of anything on the horizon.
I mean, we'll see. You never know. I mean, it's one of those things you never want to count out James Cameron, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. And if anybody could give it a run for its money,
Hmm.
it would be that. It would be Cameron. Coming back into the fray with his next thingy. So
I do feel like it'll be something unexpected, though. Like I feel like that's always how these big phenomenons happen, though.
yeah,
It's something that you can't necessarily plan for. It's
it's
just something that
true.
will
And
really
yeah,
capture the imagination of the public. And it's the thing too, where they keep trying to make these not the Lord of the Rings, but they keep trying to make these Game of Thrones kind of not clones, but everybody wants the next Game of Thrones, and it's
yeah. But
reverse
the next
engineering that.
next thing is something new, something that's going to be like, oh
Yeah.
wow,
So
didn't
it's,
see that.
it's, it's you can't really reverse engineer that. I mean, you
Yeah,
can, but you'll always just get a copy of a copy, right? It'll never be as well
exactly.
received.
And
How many
listen,
Breaking
I
Bad
love Game of
clones were
Thrones,
there?
but like I
Yeah.
don't
How
want a
many?
clone. I don't want
Yeah.
another Game of Thrones. Like I'm happy with what we got. Bring me the next thing. I think that's why I like The Boys as much as I did too, because it was like almost like a palate cleanser from all this other stuff that I've been watching. And I also feel like audiences are now ready for the superhero deconstruction. When Watchmen came out, it was too early. People weren't
Yeah.
ready for that because it
Um,
wasn't in the zeitgeist yet. They didn't have that cultural understanding of what superheroes are enough to like say, well, let's talk about taking them down.
Very curious to see how that show is going to turn out. Very curious because I like the trailers. I like what I've seen so far.
Which are you talking about the boys?
No, Watchmen.
Oh, Watchmen. Oh, the Watchmen show. Yeah, yeah. I was talking about the Watchmen movie, but
Hmm. I do love
um,
that movie too, though. I think it's a great
yeah,
movie.
it's great. And I also think it's great that they're not trying to remake it. And Lindelof went on record saying that that movie happened. So the events of that movie absolutely are in existence in the show.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. And he's like, I'm not going to ever try and, we're not going to remake it, but those events stand. So I think that's
Don
cool.
Johnson.
Don Johnson. So now we have some
I'm gonna be
listeners.
really mad if he gets killed off in the fucking pilot, though.
I don't think he will, though.
Well, I don't know. He signed on for Nash Bridges too, though. I don't know. He could be.
Eh, it's true. And I will say, like, for the boys, like, there are some deaths in that show where I was like, oh, shit. So, and then again, another reason why I liked it, there was like
You gotta
some
hook me up
deaths.
with another Don Johnson interview, man.
I'll do my best.
And Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy's. I'd love to interview Eddie Murphy.
Is
He's coming for
Don at TIFF this
Yeah,
year?
Dolomite is my name. Is playing at TIFF, and
No,
I know the writer.
Don Johnson there.
Oh, Don. Yeah,
Yeah.
Knives Out, man.
Oh yeah. But we don't know if he's gonna be there or not.
Well, we don't. I mean, I hope he is. I'll give him a call. What else is he got? Make it. Come on.
I mean, he's gonna clear his schedule for you.
yeah.
Okay, so we have some listener questions. Armando Ronquillo wants to know, actually, Armando and Gil. So we have a lot of questions about Mahershala Ali as Blade,
Mhm.
and they're very curious how that's going to work. Will it? Can he be better than Wesley? Can he do?
I don't think he'll be necessarily be better, but I think he'll be different. You know, we touched on this on the Lost episode. You know, it was Wesley Snipes had the physicality in the martial arts that I don't think Mahershala Ali will ever quite have, right? Because it's just not, you know, Wesley Snipes trained his whole life, was a legit martial artist, but Mahershala Ali can bring something very different in terms of drama, you know, and in terms of acting abilities. Mahershala Ali is one of the best actors out there. He's legitimately just fantastic. I mean, sorry, you watch him on True Detective, you know, he's amazing on that show. And it's interesting because Stephen Dorff really stole that show as well, and he was the famous villain Deacon Frost from Blade.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It's just it'll be interesting to see. I mean, part of me is kind of sad that Wesley Snipes is coming back because I do love him in that role, just nostalgically. But Mahershala Ali, it's hard to imagine him not doing really well. And like Marvel knows what they're talking about when they cast these guys. Like I have a lot of faith that that's going to turn out very, very, very well.
Yeah. I'm interested to see. I think Marshalli. It's weird. Like I didn't even notice it, but if you put sunglasses on him,
Oh yeah, he looks like Blade. Yeah, yeah,
just like Wesley Snipes as Blade.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's like as far as the look goes and the acting goes, I know that he can do it. But I loved Wesley Snipes as Blade, minus Blade Trinity, which is just a train wreck. But Blade and Blade 2, I think, are just great. I think he was great as the character, but I just don't. I don't think they were ever going to bring him back.
No.
To be in these films. So
and he handled it exactly right too, though, in his Twitter reaction to it.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, he wasn't a dick about it. He was
not
like,
at all. You know, he knows. I mean, I feel, you know, there were always interesting stories about, you know, he was going through a hard time with the Blade trilogy, and there's a reason the movie sucks as much as it does, not just because of the director, but you know, it would be cool if he was brought into the fold somehow. I'm curious as to who plays Whistler, if they do Whistler.
Yeah, I don't know.
I got a good recommendation. Don Johnson.
He's so stupid.
Fantastic.
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love your fantastics. Yeah, so I guess we'll see. I think it's early days too, but I think that, you know, this was also a role that Mahershala Ali wanted. So this is a role that he met with Feige, and this is from my interview with Feige. Actually, you can listen to this, but you know, I asked him how it came to be, and he said they met with Mahershala Ali and, you know, kind of just felt him out like, hey, what would you be interested in? Blade was exactly what he wanted. Like,
I mean,
he
should be an action star. He really should. He should have his moment. He should have his big franchise. You know, I hope that it works out for Idris Elba too with Suicide Squad. You know, these guys are, you know, they should be action stars, right? And it's kind of cool to see how well Chadwick Boseman has done. I'm very curious to see his 21 Bridges.
Who's in 21 Bridges?
Chadwick Boseman.
Oh, Chadwick. Okay.
Yeah.
I got confused for a second there.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't think 21 Bridges is going to flop, sadly, but
we'll see.
I just don't think it's it's a kind of, it's like
it might
90s,
flop.
It's like a 90s action movie, and it might be good.
Yeah, I feel like it'll be good though.
But I just don't think people are going to flock to see it.
We'll see.
It seems more like a Netflix movie anymore. So another question, Sarij wants to know, does Thanos' snap work on vampires? If not, those guys should be really pissed about the Infinity War event reducing their food sources. Man, that's just way too deep for me. I'm sure it works on whatever, because that the Infinity Stones encompass all of existence, so.
Okay, nerd. He's kidding, clearly. That's good.
Jeremy Edwards says we should do a list of our favorite movies, maybe a top 10. A top 10 would be
needs a lot of thought before I could ever do it, though. I really
I could rattle off like 3 or 4 movies that I know would be in there.
Yeah, but I need time to think about it if I'm going to do it. Though. Like I need to prepare.
I feel like it just, you know, it's constantly shifting too. It's a living document. It's never something that's like set in stone.
Yeah, me too. They always change.
Set it in stone and say, "This is it. It could never be changed." Like,
I mean, I think when I was a kid, I think my favorite movie was probably Rambo 2. You know, and it wouldn't be in my top 10 now. I still love it. As a kid. I still love it, but it was in my top 10 as a kid for sure.
As a kid, it was always Die Hard, and Die Hard is kind of always been my number one and still is. But it was always like Die Hard, Rambo: First Blood Part 2, Commando, Enter the Ninja, The Karate Kid.
Enter the Ninja was in your top 10. You love that movie? You're talking about the
No,
Franco
Revenge of the
Hero.
Ninja. Revenge
Oh,
of the
Revenge, and that was Shokazugi.
Shokusugi, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, fucking love that movie.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I have the Canon, the Blu-ray of it. I love it. It's so great.
Revenge of the Ninja. How about Ninja 3 combination?
No, I didn't like those. Revenge of the Ninja is the only good one. Let's see. Ulysses is back. He has caught us. Have we seen the Watchmen trailer?
My cat has just emerged and is walking around the apartment now.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Big news. Have we seen the Watchmen trailer?
Of course.
He said he might get HBO just for Watchmen. Also, Chris, it has Don Johnson.
Fuck yeah, man. I know. Are you kidding? That's on top of that news.
The new trailer for Watchmen was really good. The Comic-Con one definitely got me in.
Not enough Don Johnson in it, though. That's what makes me worry that he's not in it on the pilot. Because there's a scene in it, if you look, where he's piloting this spacecraft with like flames coming out, and it looks like he kind of might die in like a blaze of glory.
Ship. That's the owl ship.
Yeah, but it was Don Johnson piloting it, I think, and it's just kind of.
I didn't catch that. Maybe.
Yeah, it looked like it. I was just kind of a little bit worried, but but regardless, I think it's gonna be great. I mean, the casting is really good. I like all the actors.
I'm intrigued. I mean, I'm absolutely gonna turn out.
But it's weird if you look at the character descriptions. It's like a cop show, though. They're all cops.
Yeah. Well, it seems like something happened where the superheroes went into hiding, so there weren't. Now they're reemerging. So
yeah. But they're not the stars though. Like the cops are the stars, and that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued.
I think though that Regina King or Regina Hall. Regina Hall. I think her husband on the show is like a superhero in hiding. That's the idea that I get from it.
Well, she's kind of.
Yeah. Well, I think they both kind of are.
Oh no, it's Regina King.
Yeah, Regina King. Regina Hall's on. They both gave Oscar-worthy performances.
Regina Hall's from like Girls Trip.
Yeah, she was in this great movie, Support Our Girls, and she was in Shaft, and she was in Black Friday, show I really like.
And Regina King was in. I think she was in Cherry.
If Beale Street Can Talk.
Yeah.
Enemy of the State.
Yep, Enemy of the State.
Great Tony Scott movie.
One of Gene Hackman's last films.
Yeah.
Was it his last film? I don't know.
His last was Welcome to Mooseport.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gene. Well, anyways, that about wraps it up for this week. We got through all the stuff we needed to get through, and well, it's not that we had to get through it. It's not like this is homework, but we make an agenda and we try to keep it a concise time frame, and so that we can cover everything. So, little housekeeping stuff, guys. Please check us out on Instagram. Give us a follow there. Check us out on Facebook. And then you can, obviously follow us on Twitter, Arctic Ninja Paul for me, and Chris Bumbray. It's just Chris Bumbray, right?
C Bumbray.
Oh, at C Bumbray for Chris on Twitter. And then really importantly, if you guys could give us a review on iTunes, that really, really helps in a big way to help push the podcast forward. Review and a rating would be wonderful. So if you enjoy the show. And a rave, yeah. If you enjoy the show, if you like what you listen to, by all means, please give us a review, share it with your friends, and
keep your fucking mouth shut.
If you don't like it, shut the fuck up, just fuck off.
Although you wouldn't have spent 2 hours listening to us ramble though if you didn't like the show. Like, let's be honest.
I don't know. Some people hate listen. I don't know. I don't know who has that kind of time though. I think some people that may not like our brand of discussion. Maybe they listen to one episode and decide to hate us, like the one piece of shit that left us a shit review on iTunes because they can't handle people having different feelings about things. So, anyways, but seriously, give us a review if you have a moment. It doesn't take long. Just go to iTunes and find the podcast and give us a review. It helps tremendously. It helps keep us alive, thriving. What's up next week? What's coming out? It's been the shittiest.
Hobbs and Shaw.
Oh shit, Hobbs and Shaw next week.
Yeah, I'm seeing it on Wednesday. Yeah. I can't wait.
Oh, you're seeing it Wednesday?
Yeah, I'm seeing it Wednesday.
We did not get invited to the junket for that, so all my fellow junketeers
but it's always weird though with Universal though. It always seems really hit and miss.
Yeah, but I think we're doing Good Boys.
You know, call me crazy though. I don't think that Hobbs and Shaw is going to do super well at the box office.
It's
I
kind of
feel
the
like
last. It's like the last big movie of the summer.
I
Like,
feel people are
what else
kind of
is there?
spent though a little bit at this point, and you know, and the thing is, I've been saying this for a couple weeks now. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, because I really like Statham and The Rock, and I think it looks like a lot of fun. I think people love Vin Diesel though in these movies, and I think they're underestimating his draw a little bit with that.
We'll see. I
Yeah,
don't
we'll
know,
see. It'll
but
be
you're
interesting
right.
to
You're
see.
right. It is a test for to
Yeah,
see if The Rock and Statham can carry
I mean, The
Fast and Furious
Rock
movie. So
is an interesting case as a movie star too, because he's never really had a huge solo hit. Like, not really. Jumanji was massive, but you know,
it was a group
it's
effort.
the
Yeah.
property. Yeah, it's just like, I mean, Skyscraper flopped. Rampage did okay, but not particularly well. He's had kind of a bunch of movies that haven't done super well. So it's interesting. You know, the Fast and Furious movies, the ones that have been huge for him, but he hasn't been the star of any of those. Those movies were all carried by, you know, the team, right? And I think people do love the team, and I think they love him as part of the team. And people will be disappointed that he's not in the next Fast and Furious because he hates Vin Diesel. But it'll be an interesting test to see how this does. I hope it does well. I think it looks really fun. I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going no matter
I
what.
don't think it'll flop, but I think that people will be surprised at how kind of soft it opens.
Yeah, you might be right.
Like, I would imagine it opening with like a $40 million opening, like similar numbers to how Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is doing.
Yeah, I don't see it doing like it's not
Yeah.
going to do like 70 or 80 million open.
No,
No
I don't
fucking
think it
way.
don't.
And it's just an action movie. It's
Yeah,
not,
I don't think
and
so. I
it's
think the
not
next Fast
full
and
Fast and
Furious
Furious.
will. Fast and
Yeah.
Furious will, but I also think it's a mistake when the studios do too many movies like that. Though it is kind of they're trying to do with Marvel, like what they did with Marvel with Fast and Furious, and I just don't know that there's enough meat there to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they don't have any superheroes. Universal
Yeah,
has no
yeah,
superheroes.
that's the
So
guy deciding, and the
Fast and
Dark
Furious is kind
Universe.
of like
Dark
that's
Universe
what they
didn't
got.
really work.
Yeah, fuck God. What an
Yeah,
embarrassment that was.
yeah.
Shit. I mean, that's like a legit embarrassment for
Yeah, the
all.
only terrible Tom Cruise movie. It's like, yes, congratulations, you made the one really bad Tom Cruise movie.
Well, Jack Reacher Never Go Back isn't exactly
I have a
great
soft spot for it for obvious reasons.
for obvious reasons, but yeah, it's not good. And it's so surprising that Ed Zwick directed that. I'm just like, what?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
And by the way, I went and saw Glory this past week for Fathom Events at the theater, and it was glorious. It
That is
is
one of
every
my.
bit as amazing as it always is. That James Horner music, and I gotta
Oh,
say,
thank you.
everybody loves Denzel, and Denzel is wonderful, and Morgan Freeman is wonderful. But I gotta say, this I really noticed Matthew Broderick this time.
Yeah.
There are some scenes that he has that I think people just didn't
Well,
really notice.
when he has to be cruel to his friend Courtney B. Vance's character,
Yeah,
right? And
I mean,
or is it Andre Brower? It's Andre Brower.
It's Andre Brower.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a scene. And the one big thing about it is that Matthew Broderick he's young. What they don't think we don't take into account is that he is a young man. He's like in
And he
his
has to
20s,
prove that he's
and
the
he's a
leader.
colonel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like, it's lonely at the top, and that's very much the case with him. And there's a scene when he volunteers at the end to lead the charge against Fort Wagner, where just before he gets off his horse, he goes up to the beach, and he's looking out over the waves, and you can see what he's doing is he's finding his courage because he's scared.
Yeah.
He's a boy, he's like a kid.
No, he knows
You know,
he's
and
gonna die.
Yeah, and he's like, he's looking out, and he's like, you see the seagulls flying, and he's just looking at the waves, and he's just got this. It's like he's taking this moment to just kind of release all of his fear and find his courage.
I just got a new
And
hat.
you got a new hat.
Yeah, I ordered a hat from Amazon. I like to wear these black caps and military kind of caps, and I lost mine, and I got a new one. Just got delivered. Amazon Prime. Thank God.
You have to send me a picture of your hat. Wearing it.
It's funny though. So Glory has one of my favorite scenes of all time though, and it's the end of the movie when they're making the charge on Fort Wagner, and then the music comes in, and it's Carrie Elways and Morgan Freeman leading the troops.
Oh yeah, at the
I mean,
end.
that's chills, man, chills.
The whole just hearing Horner's music and multiple.
Oh, that is
such
that is probably his best score.
It's absolutely his best, and he's got a lot of great scores. But I think Glory is. There's no other score like it. It's amazing. So, anyways, go revisit Glory.
Yeah.
And leave us a review on iTunes.
I have it on Blu-ray.
Good. Watch it. It's great. I love it. Anyways, thanks you.
I guess that's a too well-known movie for best movie you never saw. Eh?
Yeah.
Kind of a classic, I guess so.
It's kind of an obvious one.
Yeah.
You definitely got it. You got. There's a sweet spot with best movie you never saw.
Yeah, there really is. Obscure, but not too obscure.
Yeah. If you go way too obscure, people don't care. Nobody will comment. There'll be no shares. Nobody really gives a fuck. But if you find something that definitely fits that mold, it's a very obvious choice. I think that's and that was always the reason why I wanted to do the column, because there's these movies that everybody always talks about. There's movies that nobody talks about, and then there's those movies that we all watched, and then you're kind of like, how did this escape the popularity contest?
Yeah.
How is this not, more recognized? So I think that's the sweet spot for best movie you never saw. So okay, so thank you for joining us. We appreciate you guys. We thank you for giving us your time and listening. We will be back next week, back on track. I was out doing Comic-Con stuff. Chris has had a busy summer, but
there's not much going on now, though.
Yeah, it's all kind of winding down, so we should be back on track. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode, and we will see you next week.